Hey, Joe. Welcome.
Oh,
Welcome to the new house.
thanks for having me, Ben. Yeah, I frequented your old place in Hickory Hills, and it's nice to see the new digs.
Yeah, it's different. Like we were talking about before, it's different,
Mm-hmm.
but has a lot of the same things. I was also able to start from scratch and make it a little bit more clean and sleek and organized.
Sure.
I got to build it from while having all these things.
Mm-hmm.
The old place is a slow, lifelong process of adding and adding. So everything was layered on each other, the walls in the basement, the house. It was just layers of art and objects, and I wasn't able to properly organize it.
Yeah, now there's a theme, and you've selected the nicer.
Yes.
There's an order to everything.
There's order. Things are framed. I
Yeah.
used to never have frames. It's
Yeah.
expensive to frame everything, but yeah, things are framed and organized and measured.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the theme is everything in this basement, every little thing, especially if you look at small details, it's all DZ or DZ Fest, everything.
Yeah.
And then upstairs is a little bit more just the artwork I've accumulated through it.
Yeah.
And not less, because I used to kind of get exhausted just seeing DZ everywhere, while you're relaxing and
Sure.
watching stuff, and it's always in your face.
Well, you had to separate things out a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. I think it kind of reflects the stage you're at in your life right now.
Yeah.
Right? Just kind of decluttering a little bit, organizing things, Not that we don't love our past life.
No,
but it's you progress, you move on, and I think it's the way it should be. You can't carry all that stuff with you your entire life, and at some point, all that stuff has to give way to the good stuff.
Yeah.
You can discard some of those things. You can be a little bit more select. I think that's just part of life,
Yeah. It is. It is. It's a good thing to grow. That's how I felt leaving the old house. It was hard, but I was I'm trying to do something different and not be someone who is grounded just in Hickory Hills, Illinois, forever, Try something. I'd also never lived anywhere else. I wanted to go on that new adventure,
Yeah, I always admired the fact that you were in, this all kind of came out of Hickory Hills, Illinois, because it's the middle of, for people who aren't familiar with Hickory Hills, it's the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you don't know about it.
Nobody, first of all, in the Chicagoland area, nobody cares about the South Side.
Yeah.
So once you get south of where we're at right now,
Bridgeport, yeah.
Yeah, Bridgeport, and even then, Bridgeport used to be considered kind of already kind of rednecky Chicago, area. The South Side has always been kind of cast away as not very important. But these days, it's become Pilsen, Bridgeport. This part of the city is becoming cool.
Yeah,
part of it is because it's affordable.
Yes, very affordable, and it's starting. I don't know why it took so long, but it's starting to look really bad optically when you have a bunch of rich people in one place and a bunch of non-rich people everywhere else. And historically, it's been the whole South Side. The whole thing.
Yeah.
With very little exception. You get your Beverly. You get some neighborhoods that are an exception.
Yeah.
But for the most part, and I think it's not cool. It's not good. And I'm glad that it's becoming a healthier place to be, and there's coffee shops and record stores and bike shops opening up around here, things that didn't exist before. I think they're starting a new music venue. That's what I heard. Don't know too much about it. But yeah, it's always been unfortunate. The South Side just kind of gets disregarded.
Yeah. It was very working class. It wasn't very highly regarded as far as the arts or food or any of those things. Although, for ethnic foods, there's always a place, right? You put your Polish foods, your
Chinatown. So much Chinese food here because of Chinatown, and Mexican food.
Mexican food, of course, and so this area, growing up on the southwest side of the city, I've always
What
been...
neighborhood you grew up in?
I was born and raised in Little Village.
Oh.
Yeah. So I grew up around there, and then I moved to the Gage Park area.
Okay.
So
my dad's from Gage Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he grew up hopping around that area, but the last place where my grandparents lived when I was a kid growing up was 55th and Western.
Okay, yeah, right by Gage Park High School. Right by the high
what
school
about you?
there.
What streets were you by?
I was a little farther west, off of Kedzie, so Kedzie, 55th and Kedzie.
Oh, a mile away?
Yeah, a mile away.
Were you there in the 80s, 90s?
Yeah, I was there through the 80s. I moved there in the early 80s, and I was there until 5 or 6 years ago until I moved to Hickory Hills.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Okay,
I grew up there. Yeah.
Wow. So when I
really,
was there a lot in the 90s and 2000s, you were right down the street. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was always
right,
over there.
Yeah, I watched that whole neighborhood change. So there was a lot of turnover in that neighborhood.
It's a rough area.
Yeah, now it is. But back when we first moved there, it was very much like Hickory Hills. A lot of Polish families, and it was a mix of people. Middle class, a lot of cops and firemen, and that kind of stuff. It was very middle class, but little by little, it started becoming a Mexican neighborhood. So I was probably of that first wave of Mexican families to move into the neighborhood, and I saw those little old ladies move away one by one in the neighborhood and get replaced by Mexican families in that neighborhood. So I saw it go from kind of middle class white working class families to primarily Hispanic neighborhood. So, it's just kind of interesting now to look back at it and see how that neighborhood turned, and how those restaurants went from being like a breakfast place to a taqueria or something like that. So yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that you grew up right there. I had no idea. And then Little Village, what part of Little Village, like what streets?
I was right at like 27th and Ridgeway.
Okay.
So we were right down the street from the Chicago Boys Club. So there was a Little Village Boys Club that was maybe 4-5 houses away from me, right on the corner. And what's interesting about that is they had a radio station up on the second floor, where a lot of really interesting things happened. So it was like one of the first Mexican language or Spanish language stations. So it turned to like half Spanish in the evenings in the time that I was there. And my uncles were heavily involved in that station. So at some point I had all my uncles kind of went through there, had shows, and there were also some really important DJ shows, like music shows that happened there in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Kind of the advent of house music and Italian disco and that era. It was a really interesting time and interesting place to be. For me, I was just a kid. I was 10, 11, 12 years old, 13 years old.
You were born in the 70s?
I was born, 1970. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, I was like 10, 11, 12. I mean, something I grew up with, but little did I know how important that was, all that stuff that was happening at that time, because in my house, you grew up listening to all this music, and, the radio station was just kind of part of your life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're familiar with somebody named Kenny Jason. He was part of this group called the Hot Mix 5, which are kind of like legendary DJs here in the Chicago area.
Okay.
And that was all kind of at the beginning of, from that disco to that house transition here in Chicago. You hear a lot about house music being born here, and a lot of those guys had a lot to do with that.
Okay, and were they from where you were from?
They were in the area. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they necessarily grew up in Little Village, but they were at that radio station. It was WCYC.
Okay.
That later on became Radio Arte, WRTE, which was then really it moved to 18th Street. So it was located in Pilsen at some point. That station was bought out by the Mexican Fine Arts Museum.
Oh, okay.
Or kind of run by the
Pilsen.
In Pilsen, yeah. So
okay.
I don't know exactly all of the maneuvering and the details that went on. I kind of lost track after they left the boys' club, but
okay.
Yeah.
And was Little Village primarily Mexican back then?
It was. Although when my family moved there, that was another neighborhood that they were some of the first Mexican families to move into that
What
neighborhood.
was it before that?
Czech, Yugoslavian.
It was was that area?
Yeah, it
Pilsen was all just like Czech and that shadow belt of Europe. Was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and then that kind of moved southwest to where eventually I moved in the early '80s. So it was just kind of, a kind of natural progression. I mean, Pilsen is Pilsen. not because Mexican families live there, but because, of their Czech,
Yeah.
roots.
Yeah.
So, and the little village was not a little Mexican village. I think it was,
Right.
I think it was some,
It's fascinating.
yeah.
It's difficult because now those are considered like some of the biggest Mexican neighborhoods in Chicago. And I think a lot of people don't realize like these were once other people left and they were taken over by Mexican people, and they were actually like Caucasian Czech people.
Yeah. If you walk through
It's
there,
a complicated system, the way neighborhoods ebb and flow.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know, it's not always just based on race. It sometimes is, but it's not always, especially maybe back then it wasn't. What years did it start changing from Czech to Mexican?
well, my grandparents moved there in the 70s.
Oh, okay.
So early 70s, like I think 69 or 1970. So that they were kind of that first wave moving into that neighborhood. Because I remember having, Polish neighbors and Czech Yugoslavian neighbors at that time, when I was very young. So there were still a lot of those families in the neighborhood. Polish families across the street. So yeah, I mean, like thinking back, there were a lot of there were still a lot of those families living in the neighborhood, but little by little they started leaving, and they were those houses and the neighborhood was taken over by Mexican families.
A lot of Eastern European on the south side.
A lot on the southwest side. Yeah, I mean, and they. They just kind of progressed down Archer. It was just that Archer highway, They just followed Archer all the way out, and
all the way to the suburbs. I mean, Burbank, Bridgeview, so many Polish people. Lithuanian, Polish, Hickory Hills, Palis, like
Lamont. So now
Lamont.
it's like the Lamont area and all of that whole corridor. It's like they just followed that southwest. And I mean, it's just over the course of time.
It's interesting. I grew up, like when I grew up going to Argo High School, it was like a third, it was like 30% Hispanic, 30% Black, and 30% white, and 10% Middle Eastern. But of the 30% white, a big chunk were not like Americanized white. They were like Eastern European white. Like a lot of kids that were Polish and Lithuanian who had accents just got here. So like it was interesting to grow up with a lot of white kids, but they weren't American white. So they were still like foreign.
Yeah.
And you could see it in their demeanor, their clothes, their cars, their obviously the way they speak. And it was just really fascinating to have such a diverse upbringing, even within the Caucasian world, because there's a lot of white people in Hickory Hills, but a lot of them again were like Polish.
Well, my neighborhood, I mean, our neighborhood out there, Hickory Hills, is, I say it all the time. It's like it's actually much more diverse, than it was growing up, in Gage Park. Because in Gage Park is all Mexican. I was surrounded by just Mexican families. I mean, working class Mexican families, and in Hickory Hills, I Polish people to the right of me. I got, I have Lithuanians, and you have Palestinians. I mean, you just have a much more diverse group of people living in your neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
and so it's like, well, this is. For all we always get critiqued as being not very diverse out in the suburbs, but it's actually really diverse.
I think it's an old trope, like an old thinking. Maybe 30, 40 years ago it was more accurate, but not anymore. If you go on 87th in Harlem, it's like a lot of Middle Eastern and Mediterranean.
Little Palestine. I mean, it's I was surprised to see that on the map because it's always been some of those. It's one of those things it's one of those terms that was thrown around in the neighborhood, Little Palestine. But if you look at Google Maps these days, it's on Google Maps as Little Palestine.
It feels like it. I mean, the restaurants, the mosque over there. I loved the food. I was
it's fantastic.
Going over to the Nile. Did you ever go to the Nile?
Oh yeah, of course.
All the time.
Yeah, that's where the taxi drivers go. Is the Nile? Al Bawadi across the street is like you got some money to spend, but
I just went to the Nile.
The Nile, it's like just as
Did you
good.
ever go to the bakery just around the strip?
Yeah,
I'll get like 12 pitas for a couple bucks, freshly steaming in the plastic.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's really nice to have that handy, and it's it's first class, authentic food.
Very authentic. Yeah. Hardly. My rule is, I want to make sure the restaurant and the people there aren't speaking English. I want to have to struggle to order and be confused. Like
Yeah.
that's a good sign to me. It means it's going to be as genuine as it can be.
Yeah.
And I want it to look like it's not American, whatever that means. Like when I go to Mexican restaurants, if it's not like red, yellow, and green in places, I'm like, this is gonna be a $7 taco. I'm probably gonna be like, this is fine.
Yeah.
I want it to have that look. I want like just the Mexican look. Every culture has their colors and style, and I want it to have that. I don't want it to look sleek like it's in Wicker Park.
I had a friend who once said that to me about Mexican food, and he's like, it's peasant food. It should be like it's peasant food. At first it kind of caught me off guard, but then as I thought about it, I'm like, it's humble food. It should be, the surroundings should be humble.
Yeah.
I think is what he meant.
There's just different words you can use, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
get what they're
I
going
mean,
for.
at the time when he said it to me, I was like, what are you talking about? But then later on, I got I understood what he was saying. He actually meant it as a compliment.
Yeah.
In that it's humble food. It should be the surroundings, be, humble surroundings. It shouldn't be fancy.
Right.
The good stuff is it was everyday. Working man food, you were just in Mexico City. I mean, you saw that.
Oh my God.
You saw the street taco,
It was
street
the best
food.
time of my life.
Yeah.
I ate like a king.
Yeah.
I lived like a king. I
Did
mean,
you?
when you go there
Yeah.
with even a little bit of American US dollars,
It goes a long way.
It goes a long
It goes a
way.
really long way. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you instantly like 5 to 7 times more wealthy, which is a lot.
Which is a lot. Which means that you can invite a couple of friends out to eat. And,
I mean, every time I went, everyone would just buy me everything because it's like for $8, I'm eating 8 tacos and 3 Modelos.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is crazy. Like
Yeah.
I can get used to this.
Yeah. I can move to Mexico City.
You've been there before?
I've been there, but it's been a very long time.
Oh, you went younger.
It's been a really long. It's been 15, 20 years since I've been
You
down.
should go when you can.
No, I know. I hear a lot of great things. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of good things coming out of there.
Yeah, and you speak Spanish, I'm assuming. So you're fine.
Yeah.
I was with people who did. Luckily,
Mm-hmm.
I learned a good amount. I definitely got good at ordering. By the end of the week,
Did you?
I was only ordering in Spanish. And
man.
I was like, yeah, this is fun.
A month there, you'd own the place, right?
I know. I had so much fun down there and met a lot of bands, and they were like, when are we going to do a DZ Fest here? And I was like, oh, geez, that's a logistical nightmare to like get all, like somehow you couldn't even get all the gear. You'd have to rent from there, and it's hard. When I went there with all my equipment in the airport, they essentially, their version of TSA, essentially like made me legally bribe them. Because I came in with so much equipment, and they didn't know the value of it. They couldn't assess it. It was a lot. I brought everything I could to like literally have a mobile studio. And luckily, they only saw some of my stuff. I brought most of my expensive equipment on my back in my carry-on, but my check bag was filled with cables and headphones. And they were like taking them out and Googling them to see how much they were worth.
Oh, wow.
And they were trying to charge me money, and they ended up charging me $100, and it was just essentially like a legal bribe, like because they had no idea. They were trying to figure it out, and luckily they didn't look at my cameras and mics, which are way more expensive.
Wow.
And my laptop, all those things that cost thousands of dollars.
Were you traveling by yourself?
I was with this band Machine from Chicago.
Okay.
They're from Cicero, little village area, and they came into the session here last November. We hit it off, and I told them about my idea of wanting to travel around the world, capturing different music and different music scenes that people don't know about, and then help bring it to light and give it more eyes on it and promote it, and then also bring it back to America and like kind of cross-pollinate scenes, maybe give them places they can grow something here. They can, when they go on tour, like build a bigger web than I've already been doing in Chicago and America through the fest and recording bands, but go international with it. So did that there. It's what I did in New York and Nashville, trying to, doing those things. And then I'm trying to also turn it into like a TV series called The Human Sound, where we go around, similar to, different people who travel, like that show on Netflix, Somebody Feed Phil. I don't know if you've heard of it. The guy who created Everybody Loves Raymond. Anthony Bourdain, when they go to like different countries, show the viewer the cuisine, the culture, what it's about, the history of it, trying to do that with music and music scenes and bands. Because at a certain level, you're famous, you're known about, but once you get below that, it's like no one knows about you. Only local people do. And once you're at a lower echelon of that, just like your friends and peers know about you. But you're still really talented. There's just not enough room for you at the table. The pyramid's only so big.
Only so much bandwidth, and,
right.
and so there's like so many vibrant music scenes. I lived in Spain, and
How long did you live there for?
I was there for 5. I used to race bicycles, so I was there for five racing seasons in the early 90s.
Really?
So, yeah.
So that's how you got the bike shop?
That's how I got kind of I got an interest in bicycle racing in the late 80s. And pretty quickly I really got into it, like 100%. I fell in love with this sport, goofy sport. And that was maybe 87. And by 1990, I'd run away to try to pursue a professional career in bicycle racing in Spain. And
why Spain?
Well, at the time, American racers were going to Belgium, Italy, or France. And I didn't speak any of those languages. I spoke Spanish.
Yeah.
And in 1988, the guy who won the Tour de France happened to be from Spain, and they showed this little report from his hometown. They used to do like CBS used to do a weekly recap of the Tour de France, like, a little hour recap of it. And they showed a little report from his hometown. And they showed this group of cyclists. They got together every morning to go out and train. And I'm like, wow, my eyes got really big. I'm like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there. I'm going to meet those guys. I'm going to go ride bikes with those guys. And like a year and a half later, I went to that place. I found those guys and I started riding bikes with those guys, the guys that I'd seen on television.
So you were like 20?
I was 19.
19?
I was
so
19.
You finished high school and you just...
I didn't even finish high school. I quit high school to get a job so I could save some money and go to Spain. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I was hooked.
You dropped out of high school to go race bikes.
I wasn't doing great in school either.
No?
Yeah, I was just kind of bored, And
did you ever get your GED or anything?
No, I didn't.
Wow, you just nothing.
No, I just did nothing, man. Actually, looking back at it, the best education was traveling. And just being curious. Curious for life.
More. Could not agree more.
I think if you just have a curiosity for life, I learned what I needed to learn along the way, and I've never been shy about asking. But I learned so much more traveling and pursuing that than I think I would ever have learned in school. In
Absolutely.
kind of a formal setting.
Yeah.
And so
No, some of the brightest people I know that are the students I have, colleagues, the people I have met doing what I do, have master's degrees, PhDs. They're really smart about a few things. They think they can apply that to other things they haven't experienced, and then anything beyond that, they're morons. They haven't lived enough. They've spent most of their life in books and in a simplistic way. And they're great at what they do, but in that only that field.
Yeah.
They haven't lived life. They haven't gone out. They haven't taken those risks. They haven't the call to adventure, They haven't done that. And I could tell because I somehow managed to do both.
Yeah.
Somehow in a juggling act. And I could see both sides now. Like, there were other people who would hear that and be like, oh, like, you finish high school. Like, I got excited when you said it. I was like, oh, cool. Because I know what that means for someone that got to where you are now. Like, that means you went on an adventure and you, like, tried something different and new. And you can learn that way. You don't have to go to college to learn. That just gives you a diploma and the connections for a certain professional life. But you can get in books, and now you can get it on the internet, podcasts, books, YouTube.
There's so many different ways to do it.
You just don't get that piece of paper and then the references from professors for jobs that you would get at college. College now is just breeding you for getting a job.
Yeah, there's certainly there's certainly things that you need to go to college for. There's
there's
just no other. There's just no other. You want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor.
I want my engineers, lawyers, and doctors to go to college.
I'll go. There's people for everything.
Yeah.
Thank God there are, because not everybody could be like us.
No.
But you need some of the people to be like,
but you
like
think
me.
You need both.
You need both,
because those engineers, doctors, and lawyers love people like you and me who do adventurous things. We give them entertainment. We give them something to do. We give
Yeah.
them something to look at, to think about.
Mm-hmm.
The poets, the writers, the actors, directors, podcasters,
Yeah.
business owners. We are we create the hobbies for everyone who like kind of holds
I always,
this straight line in society.
the
for us.
weirdos, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's the weirdos who are actually,
Comedians,
nobody
yeah.
watches normal people. Watching normal people
Yeah.
do stuff is really boring.
It's
It's the abnormal people. It's the
Yeah.
weirdos that are fun, right? It's the people that can do something that not everybody can do, who are they're the stars of the world, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's because they can do something that you can't.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's been good or bad, but a lot of my decisions in life have been made by like what would be good in the movie. You know, so like,
if my life was a script, how
yeah,
should I write
I've
this?
got. I'm like, okay, here's the choice I'm presented with. Say, do this or do that. I'm like, well, this would probably be better for my life, but this would be a lot more fun in the movie. So let's do what's going to be good in the movie. And it's led to some really awesome adventures. It's also got me in a lot of trouble, or missed opportunities or things like that. But you adjust as you go on in
Yeah.
life. You start assessing a little bit. What
You get older. You
get
more
older.
mature. You learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, and you know what you want to. You have to manage that a little bit better.
Yeah.
You want to get to the finish line, or you can get to the end in one piece. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wait, so let's go back to Spain.
yeah,
So you're in Spain.
mm-hmm.
It's the early 90s, right?
Yeah. It's 1990.
1990.
It was an awesome time,
You're
man.
19 years old.
Yeah. I mean, it was. That's
What are you doing out there besides racing? Who do you know? Where are you staying?
nothing. I didn't know
Would
nothing.
you have money to live? Would you have a job?
Well, I saved money.
Did you
So
have a job there?
No, I did get a couple of jobs, and I did weird. I like found a couple of things that I could do to generate a few extra bucks.
Yeah.
But very much like you in Mexico, like at that time the dollar was really strong. They weren't on the euro yet, so it was the peseta, the Spanish peseta.
Oh, okay.
So the dollar was pretty strong against the peseta, and
So you went there. You were kind of
Yeah.
solid for a bit.
I had enough money for 6 months.
Oh, okay.
I had budgeted.
And that's a lot for a 19-year-old to do.
Yeah, but my budget must have been $1,000 a month or something like that. So I'd worked for 2 years and saved maybe $5,000 or $6,000 or whatever it was, and I'm like, well, they would give you a 6-month visa at that time, so you could be in the country for 6 months. So I'm like, all right, here I go, man, 6 months. Have to rent an apartment and have some money for food and.
How was the food there back then? How was it?
Oh, food was excellent.
Yeah.
Food still is excellent.
Yeah.
I just got back from there. So I mean,
Right.
food is great. It's but it was affordable. I was staying at kind of what they call a pension, which is just a room in a boarding house basically. Just got a room and shared a bathroom with 3 or 4 other people, or whoever lived in the house. And
What area? What city?
I lived in a town called Segovia, so just north of Madrid.
Okay.
About an hour and a half north of Madrid.
How close to Uruguay is Madrid or Spain?
That's
That's funny you saw that.
Yeah. Arguelles. That's actually like a stop on the metro in Madrid.
For those listening, that's my last name.
Yeah.
It's a town in Madrid
In-
that my name
in
comes
Spain,
from.
yeah, a town
No,
in Spain.
In Spain, rather.
Yeah. Every. There's so many surnames, all right? Leon and Avila.
Yeah.
And it's like when you ride around the country, you're just like, wow, every town
It's
is
like all my friends I
the
grew
surname.
up with. I see all their last names.
Yeah, every single one.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
That's funny.
But I mean, going back to Spain, there was a really vibrant music scene. I tapped into this. So when I got to this town, it was a tiny town. It's 50,000 people living there, and Spain was pretty insulated at the time. It was under dictatorship until the late 70s. So, in the 80s, it was like exploding culturally, and Almodovar and music, and, all just the everyone was just going crazy and like finding themselves, and small town Spain was still pretty, not a lot of foreigners had kind of made it into a town like Segovia. And when I got there, I didn't look like anybody else.
I was
an American.
Yeah.
I mean, I had long hair, so word got out really quick that there was this foreigner in town with long hair, American, and they all assumed that I was a musician. I was there to race bikes, but they all assumed that I also was like, I don't know, a drummer or a guitar player or something.
They're gossiping about you.
Oh, yeah. And I quickly fell in with this group of people that were just like all these musicians in town, the heavy, like the metal scene was pretty big, and they all wanted to know me and meet me, and they wanted me to translate lyrics for them and explain to them what things, like I remember, I must have translated Hotel California 10 times
English
to different
Spanish.
English to Spanish. Yeah.
They knew you're Mexican, though?
Yeah. I mean, eventually talking and speaking to them, I explained my background a little bit, and, I'm Mexican Filipino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my mom's from the Philippines.
Oh, cool. And your dad's from Mexico?
Yeah, my dad's from
Mexico.
What part of Mexico? Matehuala, San Luis Potosí, so the north.
Okay.
Not too far from Monterrey.
Okay, my family's from Mexico City. So.
Okay. Oh, your family's from Mexico? Chilangos.
Yeah, my grandpa. I stayed at his house when I went there with his sister and my aunt and her daughter. It was amazing.
So they're still living in that house?
Yeah, it was so cool. I slept in like his bed and went to like his restaurants. Where he lived, I forget the neighborhood name. There were so many neighborhoods they found me too.
Distritos and
so many, but where they lived, like no tourists go. It wasn't that bad. It's just a place where there's no tourists.
Yeah, there's no reason.
So everywhere I went, everyone was like, I stuck out. And at the restaurants, I stuck out, and they kept asking my aunt if I can speak English. They just wanted to keep hearing me speak English. It was a small area, and it wasn't the safest area, but it wasn't that bad because we drove past some slums and unfortunate places, But yeah, it was cool to go back to I felt for the first time in my life this weird calling to roots that I've never felt ever in my life, But Filipino and Mexican, my friend Vinny and Zach, who I play a bunch of bands with, and Charlie's played bands with, them, their mom is Mexican, their dad's Filipino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, the opposite.
Okay.
I always say Filipinos are it's like the tofu of the human race. They just mix with everything, It's I know so many different Filipino combinations, I've met over the years. I'm like, wow, there's, just everything, So
yeah. And so, have you been to the Philippines?
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. I think if I ever did go, I probably feel like you did in Mexico City.
Yeah.
My mom came here very young and to work in the medical field. She was a nurse, and so it was an easy way for women from the Philippines to come to the United States because nurses were very much in demand, and they can go to school in the Philippines and transfer all of their credentials over to the United States, and the United States wanted and needed nurses, so it was a really easy way to make the move here. Well paid, and then they were able to send money home and support their families. So that's why especially women my mom's age, you see so many nurses in the Filipino community, women that came here as nurses. And she and my dad met at working at a hospital. So.
Oh, okay. What was he doing there?
He was an orderly. So he was an orderly, and apparently he liked to work the nurse's desk.
I wonder why.
Yeah. It went well for him. Yeah.
That's
so
funny.
yeah.
Okay, so you're in Spain. You're hanging out with musicians, translating metal and rock music for them.
Yeah, and I get exposed to this, these little local music scenes. These regional music scenes that were vibrant. Really good musicians. And as you said, they're just people that they really never even make it national.
Yeah.
They never move out of this region, but within their what would be equivalent of a state here. Just have awesome following. They fill a bar, and and people would travel to go and see them. They'd travel a couple 100 miles to to go pack a bar, and it you know, battle of the bands and that kind of thing was, you know, it was really strong, you know, and some would succeed and maybe make it a little bit more, go on national tours, but never more than that, you know, because I kind of kept my eye on a lot of them, and it was very rare for them to make it, you know, out of Spain, and, you know, very, like, even out of their region. And I always wondered why, you know, it's like, why these guys are really good. I mean, they sound great, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, they're really, and you could see the work that they put into it. It wasn't lack of effort, you know, it was, you know, it, like you said, there's just so, the keepers of that, you know, that world, you know, they only let so many people in, you know.
There are definitely gatekeepers.
There's gatekeepers, and
it's so unfortunate because I mean, I've worked with thousands of talented musicians, tens of thousands of individuals.
Yeah.
And like, probably to the best of my knowledge, if I had to guess, 20, possibly 10 of them like do it professionally, like make a living off of playing music. So like it's just like 0.001%.
Yeah.
You know, but there's so many good ones, so many. And so I'm making it my own mission to expose them and use what I can, my world, my platform, my notoriety to do it, because it's like no one else is going to, apparently.
Yeah, you just do your part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you can do at some point. It's just like, if you can affect your group and the people around you, well, then you're already, you know, that's more than what most people are doing. And a lot of times I think that if everybody could just have that kind of effect on the people immediately around them, if everyone did that, it would, you know, everyone would get a little, everyone would rise up.
Exactly.
You know, it's like oftentimes you're worried about all these things that you can't have any effect over, that you have absolutely no control over.
Yeah.
And you ignore the things that you do and the people you do have control over. You know, if you just kind of looked immediately around you, whether it's a family member, a neighbor, a friend, in my case, a customer, or somebody who walks in the door, if you can make their life a little bit better, you can make, you know, if you can do things in your immediate circle, and if everybody did that, you know, I think
the world would be a better place.
It'd be a better place.
People would not hurt each other.
No.
Because most people don't hurt their fellow neighbor, client, friend. Shoot, it starts with yourself.
Yeah.
Be good to yourself and then go from there.
Well, I mean, I think it says a lot about like where the state of the world at the moment, you know, is like, if you go out into the street, you know, most people aren't beating each other up, you know, walking down the street. I mean, we're going on with our lives every day, and, you know, certainly we live in a big city, and you got to be careful. But for the most part, it's, you know, it's business as usual. Everybody's getting along. But if you open your phone right now and you start you just start scrolling a little bit,
I feel like you're in hell.
You feel like the world is coming down around you, you know, and
especially if you keep doing it, because then it figures out your algorithm and only shows you that
it
stuff.
only shows you that. And I'm like, wait a second, you know, I mean, if you were only to pay attention to that, it seems like you're going to walk out and, you know, something horrible is going to happen to you. But if you just open your eyes around you, you know, every day, it's like people are, for the most part, you know, doing the thing that they've always done, right? I mean, you're getting by. Everyone's just kind of doing their thing, and you know, it'd be so nice if everybody can just turn the temperature down a little bit on all that stuff, you know, because I mean, we really are, for the most part, getting along. You know, there's these things that are, you know, driving a wedge between everybody, or so we think, but really we're, you know, most of us are pulling all in the same direction. You know, we just want to get home every night in one piece, you know?
Get home alive and safe, be with loved ones, be loved, give love, have fun, travel a little bit, you know, have something meaningful. You know, have something meaningful.
I think that's really important right now.
It's the most important. It seems like you found that at, 19 years old, because you still are in the bike world.
Yeah, I mean,
because you have your own. You haven't said what you do. You own your own.
I own a bicycle shop. I own a bicycle shop. Yeah. It's always called me back. You know, I mean, the bicycle's always been really good to me. And like bike racing in that world has always been kind of a safe place for me, and it's what I know. So a lot of my friends to this day are people that I met when I was 18 and 19 years old, and when I opened the bike shop, and having the bike shop now is almost, I feel it like it's almost an obligation. It's almost something I have to do, because all this information that I have, everything that I've accumulated, all these stories, more so the stories, the knowledge, of course, just knowing how to fix things and do things. But the history and where these things come from, the origin stories of a lot of these things have been passed on to me, and now I look around and, my former bosses are hanging it up, they're closing their businesses and retiring, or
former bike shop owners.
Former bike shop owners, yeah. I used to work at a big shop in the city called Cycle Smithy down on Clark Street, just north of Fullerton.
Okay, right there in Lincoln Park.
Right there in Lincoln Park. He was there for 50 years, and so I worked with him for a long time. He was a big influence and mentor of mine. And
got some serious bikers up there. People going up and down Lakeshore Drive,
Yeah, it was Lincoln Park.
Yeah,
it was Lincoln Park, and I was Lincoln Park in the 90s, you couldn't...
What was it like then? I was too young for that.
It was fantastic. It was really, I worked at two really great bicycle shops in my late teens and 20s, and even into my 30s.
It was when you came back from Spain?
It's when I came back from Spain, and even when I was in Spain. So I started working at a place called Turin Bike Shop, and they originally up in Evanston on Davis Street, and then they opened a small shop in Chicago in what used to be called North Pier, and I think they call it the Ogden Slip now. So it's just west of Navy Pier. I think there's like a Target store there now and a pizza restaurant. But at that time, it was Navy Pier wasn't what it is now. So it was a real touristy area there. A lot of boats used to dock it's an actual pier there. So a lot of boats used to come through, and there was a big nightclub above the bicycle shop called Baja Beach Club. And next door, there was a place called Dick's Last Resort.
Oh, yeah, I know about that.
Yeah. So
this was in Evanston?
This was in downtown Chicago.
Oh, okay.
So this was on Illinois Street, right off of Lakeshore Drive there. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Near the River North?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it was, for someone in their late teens, early 20s, it was a great place to like work and hang out, especially being from the South Side, it was just a fun group of people. You came in contact with a lot of really interesting people, sports athletes and movie stars, you had
really?
Billy Zane coming through, and Joan Cusack and John Cusack.
Oh, yeah. Well, Michael Jordan, he ever come through?
Not Michael Jordan, but Scottie Pippen used to come through quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he used to dock his boat. Yeah, so this was like, during the
So
Bulls.
you went from Scottie to Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That Derrick Rose story.
Yeah. Derrick Rose came through my bike shop out in the suburbs, so.
Often or just once?
A couple of times.
A
couple of times, I think he had a place in Burr Ridge.
Yeah.
So, I think I was this local bike shop.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So, even out, you'd be surprised, even out there, you have some people kind of tucked away in that area that are, I know we've done some work for Bo Jackson.
I love the best athlete of all time.
Yeah. I think he still maintains a place somewhere out there.
In Burr Ridge?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's such a legend of an athlete.
Yeah.
NFL and MLB.
Yeah. I know. Crazy, right?
Really crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then from that shop, I moved over to Lincoln Park, and that was there in, mid 90s through, early aughts.
Okay.
And, that was amazing time. I also was a little bit older, and, it was just a really, really fun time to be there. Met a lot of really interesting people there because, it's, if someone's not familiar with Lincoln Park, it's kind of where, it's where everybody lives. It's where all your news people lived. It's a lot of your professional, agency people lived. It's
a nice place.
It was a nice place. It was just a who's who, a lot of politicians, people you'd see, delivering the evening news, were walking into the bike shop, and you're just, it was a who's who there. It was also like for business owners, you just get a lot of really interesting people coming through the shop, bar owners and club owners. And so, for someone in their 20s, you really had quite the Rolodex at some point, and you had a lot of friends and you knew a lot of people, and you were able to, because you were their bike guy, you would get invitations to some fancy restaurants where you had no
business going to.
You had no business going to.
I still feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. You have no business going to some of these places. And, you're able to roll up on your bicycle, with the munchies and, and sit down to a $300 sushi meal,
that sounds great right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
So you started meeting a lot of people through that.
You did. Yeah. You got connected with a lot of, people,
Was
people
this
coming
right
through
after
town.
Spain?
Yeah, this was after. So it's like two periods. That first bike shop I mentioned, Turin, that was like during my racing years.
Okay.
And so that was those were racing years that I was there. They were generous enough to let me take off in the summer and give me a job in the winter to make money so I could go back to Spain.
Yeah. Well, we never figured out, or you never went on about your racing in Spain. Like, how did that turn out? Did you actually? I
raced bicycles, but I think pretty early on, if I'm honest, I realized I was not going to be a professional. I gave it my best, and
what does it take to be a professional bike racer? And when you say racing, you talking like Tour de France type of racing?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And so I competed and actually, like I had teammates and people that I knew that went on to achieve really, really high success in the sport. And, but I was one of those 120 guys, I was in there, I was able to race, but I don't think I ever I never got to a race with the idea that I was going to win that day.
Yeah.
I participated, I helped, and I certainly did my job, but I was not going to be
just a physical thing.
Yeah. It's just like baseball here. It's like I could hit that. You got to be able to hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You hit a ball that's curving in the air.
Yeah.
From like 60 feet.
Yeah.
away.
How many people become professional basketball players? Really. Some really good ones, and guys that maybe make it through college and have really good college careers. But that next step it's
a big one.
It's a big one. That's why only one guy makes it off of the whole team. Into the maybe makes it into the pros.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with bike racing. I mean, there's you can ascend pretty high, and I got to race at a pretty high level and experience all of that. But
how far were some of the races?
You mean mileage-wise?
Mm-hmm.
On average, they were somewhere between 90 and 120 miles. 85 to 120.
I don't know if you say that like it's
mountains.
Just 120 miles.
Yeah,
that's far.
It is. I mean, looking back at it, it's pretty far. But
you probably were really fit.
I was fit.
Really fit.
Yeah. I mean, that's all I did was I was racing.
There's nothing you can do but be fit if you're doing that and not hurting yourself.
Well, and that's the kids that I was racing with, they'd been doing it since they were 5 years old. Just kind of like baseball and football here.
Okay.
These are, I got into it when I was 16 or 17.
They had a big advantage.
They had a huge advantage, and I didn't, in the United States, you weren't exposed to that. I got exposed to it through watching television. But, these kids, there's a whole different culture over there for the sport.
What is it about Europe where like bike racing, car racing, Formula One, why is it so like it's like their thing, and then America's just got like it's just so separate with certain sports and certain activities? I can't.
Yeah, baseball, football, basketball. Right, those are the three things here in this country, and then everything else. Right,
and some hockey,
some hockey, some hockey, and but even hockey is like a dirty, like growing up around here. I mean, we're a big hockey town, but even then
we are now.
Now we
Especially
are.
when we started winning like 13 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, everybody jumped on the bandwagon in Chicago.
Big time.
Yeah. I was like, all of a sudden,
I never thought
fans.
about the Blackhawks until 2010, and I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I guess we're winning.
It's funny. My parents grew up watching the Blackhawks. So
really?
Because they used to be on free TV. So when they were on TV, my mom was exposed to like Bobby Hull, that era of hockey.
Yeah.
she knew it really well. Like they watched hockey, but then they were taken off free television, and there was this. My generation was never
Yeah.
exposed to hockey.
My dad said that because he said he used to go to the games for like a couple dollars back in the day.
Yep.
He was born in '54, so he said that you weren't able to see it again until like the 2000s. They brought it back onto like TV.
Yeah,
There's a massive like 20, 30 years of like no.
my whole generation
Yeah.
was never exposed. As a kid, I didn't know anything about hockey. I
Yeah.
didn't see it. I knew some families that were kind of into hockey, and it's kind of the early days of cable television too in Chicago. So not a lot of people had cable TV, and so it was just kind of this thing that happened. But I didn't know anything about it growing up. It was all baseball and football and some basketball.
Basketball, yeah. Basketball got really popular in the 80s, though, with Magic and Bird and Jordan. Because it wasn't that popular before that. Like, not nearly as popular as it got in the NBA,
Yeah, well, and then, we were lucky in the 90s. We got, we
Hey,
had
what
that
was it
run.
like watching Jordan at your age? Because you were in
I was
Spain.
in my 20s, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was in Spain when they were winning the
The
champion.
Barcelona, 92.
Yeah.
You were there for
Yeah,
that.
I was there for all of that.
Did
Yeah.
you go near it, or?
I
That's the dream team in
So,
Barcelona.
I actually tried to get into those Olympics.
I bet. That's awesome.
I remember I visited the
Like, compete is a...
Yeah,
But-
because I was racing bikes in Spain. I was in Spain, and then I got this bright idea that I would try to get onto I tried the Philippine consulate. I'm like, how can I race for the Philippines? My mom's from the Philippines. I like anything, because every once in a while you'd see like this, you just see this, there'd be the one lone guy representing a country, in the Olympics. So I got this idea that I'm like, well, maybe the Philippines will let me represent their national team,
Probably because you're not born there.
Yeah, it was just, there was paperwork to be done. It was too much. I had to get my mother's paperwork together. It was kind of, had
hard to do.
I done it 2 years earlier, I might have had a chance.
They would let you do it even though you weren't born there?
Yeah, there were some, there were always,
Or they were just desperate for someone to represent?
if you were willing, as long as they didn't have to pay for it.
Okay.
And I was already there.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's so funny. Yeah, you could do it.
Yeah, and
You
then I'd
weren't
have
born
to,
here, but
then I'd have
whatever.
to apply, and then I have to go to the IOC, and it was just, there was a lot of things to go through, but I did have the idea. I was like, oh, that would be kind of cool. That would be a really cool thing to do. So for a time, I did try. Just because I thought it would be a cool thing to get into that race. And I knew some people that were participating in it, people that
cool.
I had raced with. And I'm like, well, I could sit in there and just say I did it. That would be really cool.
But did you try to go to the Olympics as a patron?
I didn't. I was busy. I was busy racing bikes.
Okay.
And that was in Barcelona. I was living in Segovia, so that's like the middle of the country. And Barcelona was way up there.
Okay.
It was expensive to go there. It would have cost a lot of money. I was on a budget.
Yeah, what were you doing for work at this point? After you're a couple of years in?
Well, I was coming back, saving money. So I was working here in the States. I was working at the bike shop. I'd save everything that I made, and then I go back
you'd
there.
go back and forth.
Mhm, I go back and forth.
Oh, I thought you were just there for 5 years.
No, I would go for the racing season. So like April through September or
making more
something like
sense
that.
then.
Yeah. And then
Okay, so you were still watching like the 90s Bulls here and stuff.
Yeah. Although, the championship runs, the first year that they were in the playoffs, I remember I would there was because of the hour difference, there's 7 hours ahead over there. The basketball games would be like in the middle of the night. It'd be like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that their games were on. And I didn't have a TV. I was living in, like a boarding, boarding situation,
Right. So you would miss it.
Well, there was a television store, like appliance store, and they would have the televisions on at night in the window, and I would go and sit in front of this place and watch the basketball game.
They would have the Bulls on?
Yeah, they'd have the Bulls on.
The championship game.
Yeah, they'd have the playoff
That's
games and stuff.
in Spain.
In Spain, yeah. And basketball is huge in Spain.
Yeah,
like
it
people
is.
love
In Europe,
basketball. In
it's
Europe,
really big
it
in
was
Europe.
really big. It was really big, and people loved the Bulls there.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember at some point that, I drew a crowd. Like people would be we would be sitting on a sidewalk, and there would probably be 10 or 15 people
That's
sitting there. We'd all
hilarious.
be watching the basketball game, and they would like keep me company and
Yeah.
stuff, watching the game.
That's
And
so
you know,
funny.
like 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, yeah. So,
But by the time they did the final three-peat, you were back in Chicago for that 96, 97, 98.
yeah, that second part, I was here.
Okay.
I was here. Yeah, I was back here. That was. Yeah, it was those years. I mean, it all just kind of blurred together. But those years, those were big party years for me because I had left bike racing. So
You're like, I don't have to be in good shape
I don't have
anymore.
to be in good shape, and so that's what I meant by that I had left that bike shop where I was the bike racer guy in my bike racing life in the like 90 through 95, and I went to work for this other bike shop. So this was like one bike shop was like the bike racer bike shop, eating right, and it was also that time in my life. After that, and I went to work at the second shop, Cycle Smithy. That was like the rock and roll shop.
Party
That
time.
was like party.
That's
party
the place you
central.
mentioned where you got invited to do fun stuff. And
Yeah, I mean that's just it was just a different time in my life, right? I was like I had not done and participated in a lot of things because I was racing bikes. I
Yeah.
was trying to pursue this life, and I had this lifestyle, and I was giving it my all. And now I was like I had a different group of friends, a different group of people, completely different mindset, and I fell into a group of people. The party was on, and I remember that Bulls Run very clearly because Dennis Rodman was around town a lot.
Oh, you saw him?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I had a lot. I had a good friend at the bike shop who was a bartender at Crowbar, which was like this famous nightclub in the city at that time. And Dennis Rodman frequented that club, and we would go there a lot because we had a friend there. There's also another place called Red Dog in Wicker Park. It was on the corner of North Avenue and Damon, second floor.
Right. Is it that white building? Right there? Because that's the Six Corners on North Avenue.
It wasn't
Milwaukee?
the white one. It was the one on the. I guess that would be.
there's that was that bank.
Not that one. It would be the northeast corner.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking
So
about. That
is
was
that-
a club up there.
Up on the second floor, there's a place called Red Dog, which was a famous like house music nightclub. On the first floor, there's a bar called Borderline. But up on the second floor, you would go there on like a Monday night, and you would run into 3 or 4 of the Chicago Bulls there.
Really?
Oh yeah, Ron Harper would hold court there quite a bit.
That's funny.
Dennis Rodman.
So you would see
be
them
in
there?
Oh yeah, you'd dance you'd dance alongside them. Like you'd bump into them.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did you talk to them at all?
Hi and bye? I mean, Dennis Rodman would buy you shots and a beer. It would not be unusual for you to be standing at the bar, like getting something, and have him buy you, buy you a
Wow.
drink or
That's
something.
so funny.
Yeah, I mean, they were, it was before social media and all the rest. It was before everybody had a camera in their pockets. It was a whole different scene for those guys.
They could do whatever they wanted.
They owned the town.
Oh, yeah, they did.
They owned the town, and I mean, everybody. But
But Jordan couldn't really do it because he was too big.
he was too big.
People would, he could be at risk. Like, people would do weird stuff. He's so famous.
Oh, he had a bodyguard, and he limited where he would go. But you'd see him at his restaurant.
Oh, yeah?
And-
You used to go there?
I knew somebody who was a bartender there, so every once in a while I would go there, and and he would show up. He had bodyguards, but the weird thing the odd places you would see him was on his motorcycle.
Michael Jordan?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know he rode more.
yeah, he was a big motorcycle guy, and every once in a while, like I would see him on the Stevenson Expressway, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's something I think that's really low key about him because I've never heard that about him. You didn't
Huge.
see that at all in his the Last Dance documentary. Like nothing about motorcycles.
Yeah, at that time he was a big motorcycle guy. Big motorcycle guy.
I didn't think they would take the risk.
Yeah, well, it was Michael Jordan, man.
I'm
That
sure
guy-
the NBA couldn't stop him. I'm sure they tried
Yeah.
getting him to sign stuff that they wouldn't do that,
Yeah,
Because they
no.
always try to do that.
That guy-
He's like, I'm going to do it. I own this company.
He was a superstar, man. Yeah,
That's wild. That's funny. I'm sure he has some interesting stories.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a fun time to be, I guess, out and about. And, I mean, I was just in my 20s. I was in my late 20s having a good time, and these guys were just running around I was running in the same circles that they were, again, because of the people that we had met through the bike shop.
Wow.
We just
Who would
had
have thought a bike shop?
It
I
was
never would have guessed a bike shop would get you in those types of
it
circumstances.
was a bike shop, and specifically in that area, so
The
it was Lincoln
location.
Park. So it was the people that you met. It was that network of people that,
Right.
I met I met a guy at the bike. This guy came into the bike shop one day, and he had this bicycle that had, a really odd mountain bike, downhill mountain bike. It was something you just did not see in Chicago. It was really expensive. I'd only seen it I was familiar with the brand because I'd seen it in magazines, but in Chicago, it was like, what is this thing doing here?
Downhill, it's flat here.
Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing with this thing here, And he brought it in a box. He's like, can you put it together for me? I'm like, yeah, sure, man. And we started talking. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing in town? He's like, oh, I'm working on a movie. And I'm like, oh, movies. I love movies. I'm like, what's the movie about? And he's like, well, it's kind of a gangster movie. And I'm like, who's in it? He's like, Mel Gibson. I'm like, oh, Mel Gibson. I love Mel Gibson. So, I just kind of went on working on his, on his bike. And
Wait. What year is this?
this was like 1997.
97, Mel Gibson, gangster. Lethal Weapon 4? I can't even think of what it could possibly be.
It was a movie called Payback.
Oh.
And he was like it had something to do with, it had gangsters and Chinese thugs. And
I don't know if I've ever seen that movie.
yeah, it was a good movie. It was written by, Brian Hegland, I think was his name. He had just come off of some really, really big movie, and he wrote this movie. Anyway, by the end of the conversation with the guy, I guess at some point I said, "Oh, I'd always like to be in movies," and he's like, "You know what? I think I have a part for you." I'm like,
wait, so you've been in a movie with Mel Gibson?
Yeah. I got to hang out. I got to hang out on set with him for.
So you've hung out with Dennis Robin, Ron Harper, Mel Gibson.
Oh, tons of like famous people.
The Bulls.
Robin Williams bought a bike from our bike shop at Cycle Smithy.
Robin Williams did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like it was a whole. Yeah, Oprah. Yeah, Ernie Banks. Yeah.
What? Really? Mm-hmm. Wow.
I mean, those were just. I mean, it was the neighborhood. It was the neighborhood bike shop.
Yeah,
I mean, we're right down the street from Wrigley Field. I mean, it was just, I wasn't any. The only special thing I had was that I happened to work at a place in a neighborhood where we were surrounded by just the who's who of Chicago.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Of Chicago people, politicians.
I mean,
television
I'm sure it's
people.
the same thing now in its own way,
I think maybe, I don't know that Lincoln Park, I don't know that there's that concentration of people living
not as
here
much,
in the
but
city.
It's still
yeah.
nice.
I mean, Lincoln Park is still, I think Wicker Park is probably more like Lincoln Park was back in those days.
And Wicker Park was not that nice back then.
No, Lincoln Park was it was undergoing gentrification, I guess, at that time. Wicker Park, Bucktown, that area.
Yeah.
In fact, the Real World, Chicago, was filmed on the corner of, it was right down in that North Avenue, Damon area, above this coffee shop called Urbis Orbis. So there was this famous kind of coffee shop in that area. And up on the third floor, they were shooting The Real World.
That's funny.
And there was a big, the people in the neighborhood did not like that The Real World was filming because it was a real sign that the neighborhood was turning.
Yeah.
The fact that that MTV had planted them right in that neighborhood. It was very artsy. It was also a little rough around that neighborhood was really rough around the edges at that point.
Of course, yeah.
I had a friend who had owned a bicycle shop there called Rapid Transit. And he'd tell stories of getting there in the morning and the front door being completely filled with purses and coats that he'd have to remove in order for him to open the door of his bike shop. And the reason there were purses and coats piled up on his front door was because all the streetwalkers would keep all of their stuff at the front of his shop. That's how, there were just a lot of there was a lot of prostitution in the area, and they were all working the street, and they would pile all that stuff right on his corner at his
That was
shop.
just like their safe space to put it
Yeah,
on.
yeah. It was just all piled up there. So that neighborhood was kind of like, it was.
It's so different now.
It's so different now.
Wicker
But
Park is like one of the nicest neighborhoods in Chicago.
yeah, now it's
so nice.
Yeah, now it's really nice. It's boutiques and all the
It's
rest.
so fancy.
But that shop was like,
that's crazy. I was too young for that. Like,
Yeah.
what is this, 99, 98,
This
97?
was 96, 97,
Yeah, I was like 7
98.
years old. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
totally don't.
Yeah, you
remember
missed
that.
out on that part of.
I missed out on the rough time.
Yeah, it was. There was. This was like when Doubledore was there. I don't know if you
Yeah,
remember
it was
that
there, and
Doubledore.
I used to go to shows there. That was there until a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Double
yeah,
Door. It
yeah.
closed down, and now it's a Yeti.
It's a Yeti store.
It's a Yeti store
Oh,
now.
jeez.
Yeah, Jesus, right.
Yeah,
Wicker
yeah.
Park's an interesting place.
Yeah,
now.
so it's now it's boutiques and brand stores and things like that.
Supreme and Molly's Cupcakes, or
Yeah.
Reckless Records and Doc Martens and Yeti and what's that taco place that drives me crazy? It's okay, but it's so overpriced. Big Star.
Okay.
know,
well,
it's
Big
like-
Star's been there for a long time, though. I mean, Big Star was back there
Been
back
there for
in
a
the
while.
day. Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's been that long?
Yeah,
Right there on Damon.
is that where the gas station? It used to be like a big gas station. Is that?
Oh, I
or
don't
Blue
know.
Star? Is that Blue Star? Maybe I'm confusing it.
I think Big Star is more new.
Okay, that's Big Star. So I thought there was a Star, a Blue Star. Then there used to be Holiday Club down the street. There used to be a place called Mad Bar. Yeah, I mean, there were, before all those corporate stores showed up in that area, there was a really vibrant arts and bar scene and music, huge music scene
Oh,
down
yeah.
there.
I mean,
huge.
Subterranean has probably been
Yeah.
there for a bit.
Yeah,
I
Subterranean.
think, isn't that where they filmed High Fidelity? John Cusack and Jack Black?
I think they were at, I don't know if they were Subterranean or they were at
Not
Double Door. They
Subterranean,
were
but
at Double Door.
I think they filmed.
In that neighborhood right down the
In
street
Wicker
on
Park.
Milwaukee Avenue.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah,
thought
yeah.
so.
Yeah, that's the vibe of that neighborhood back then.
Right.
They really did kind of capture that time really well there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, John used to run around that area all the time. He went to high school with some friends of friends. Actually, that Decibel shirt that he wears in the movie.
What movie?
He-
in High Fidelity.
in High Fidelity, he wears a shirt that says
Yeah.
Decibel on it.
Yeah.
That's a friend, Jeremy, owned music, like a music store, like a
Record store?
more of a
Stereo
stereo
store?
stereo
store,
shop. Yeah,
That makes sense, called Decibel.
yeah,
That makes sense.
Yeah, and
That's so funny.
and they went to high school together, and that's why he's wearing he had just opened that store.
I love that movie. It's such a funny movie. They're so pretentious. It's hysterical.
That's kind of like the, comic book shop,
Yeah.
record store, bike shop. Very much
Bike shops are like that too.
Bike shop was very much like that, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of the vibe at the bike shop that I worked at in Lincoln Park.
Pretentious
a
little bit.
little bit, yeah. I mean, you had everything. I was much friendlier, I think, and so I got along with a lot of people. I was just happy to be there,
Yeah.
But there was a little bit of everything in there, I mean, I think that the bike shops can have that same very similar vibe, and but yeah, it was a great time. The Lincoln Park and Bucktown, Wicker Park. I mean, Chicago is
It's a fun place.
it was a really fun place. Yeah,
It still is. I just wish that these weren't such a factor, because there's something more fun when nothing can be seen or captured, and you get to just be in a moment.
well, everybody is aware these days of everything that they do. I mean, I think that it was a lot more carefree. Nobody, nobody knew where anybody was.
I
you
miss
could
that. I miss just like when you'd go out.
Mm-hmm.
I had it. Luckily, I had it for a while. I didn't get a smartphone until 24. So for 24 years, I purposely delayed it,
Yeah.
texting and all that.
Mm-hmm.
For 24 years, I just was able to disappear. No one knew where I was. No one
Yeah.
tracked me. No one could call and be like, now you get mad if someone doesn't respond to you because you know that they have their phone and you know they check it.
Yeah,
Back then, you're just like, I don't know. I was just on a bike ride. I don't know. Like,
you disappear.
you just disappeared and you got back to someone when you got back to someone.
Yeah, yeah.
And before that, before your time, it was like my parents really got to disappear. There wasn't even like pager. There was nothing.
Oh yeah.
When you got home, that's when people found out where you were. Like that's it, and that's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
I miss that.
That was a really nice. It was a. I don't know. It was just different. I mean, even the way that you see celebrities these days. Because fortunately, I had some contact with people that you would consider, big time celebrities at that time. And they were, when they were in these places, they were completely relaxed. I mean, you just kind of saw them hanging out and, just doing things. You're like, oh, I thought that guy was married. You know what I mean?
I wonder what that's supposed to mean.
You're just like, I thought that guy,
That's another thing that was a lot easier.
Yeah, it was a lot easier. I mean, it was just, like they weren't so on guard. They weren't so guarded.
For someone to take a picture of you and to post it in the 90s, it's like they're probably using a film camera that to somehow capture you, get the aperture, the shutter speed,
like
everything
a secret
right,
camera or something,
and then take it home and develop. Like the chances of it that everyday people are going to do that is so rare.
Yeah. I mean, you see these guys and you're like smoking. They're smoking. You're just like, wow. You're a professional athlete. I didn't know you guys smoked and drank like that and partied the way you're partying.
They exercised so much they were able to, and it didn't have too much of an effect on their body. They were also young.
Oh yeah,
20s and 30s.
But it was. I mean, there were nights where I'm like, well, you just got them playing, and you play tomorrow. Like I know the schedule. I was into sports. Everybody was into sports.
I just watched you.
I just
TV,
watched you, and
I'm going to watch you tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're playing the Bucks. What are you doing?
What are you doing here?
We need you.
Yeah, and you're going to win. It's just like, wow, you guys are.
I mean, that's something that documentary, The Last Dance. Have you seen it?
I haven't watched the whole thing. No,
it's really interesting. You would probably really see a lot into it and see through a lot of lines because you experienced it. But they talk about that a lot. They refer to it a lot, and they mention a lot the partying and the chaos, especially with Dennis Rodman.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was really, he was on the scene. Like I'm not alone because there were a lot of people there, but you could talk to a lot of people who were out and about during those years, and everybody. If you were out in Wicker Park in that area, if you were at Crowbar in those years. I'm not alone. It's not that I'm special.
Yeah,
you just had to be there.
It's so funny.
It is
not like
scene.
that. No, I mean I go out and do so much, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone famous, ever. And I do so much. I can't even think. I'm trying to think. I can't picture anyone that's been famous that I saw just out about in Chicago. But then again, I also don't go to clubs. I've never been a club guy, so I don't know. Maybe that's it.
You'd see guys in bars. You'd see people in bars and things like that too.
That's fun. Were you into the Smashing Pumpkins at all back then?
Yeah,
because they were such a big Chicago band. Back
then.
I
mean, I don't know that I was into them. I think I've gotten more into them now with time because they were so big and they were so popular at the time that there were more like. There were more indie or like less known alternative bands. I think that we were maybe into. Like they got so big, that at some point they were everywhere, and they were just you'd hear it too much.
Yeah,
it was like super popular music, especially in Chicago. Yeah. I mean, it was just like. But now with time, there's you're like, I could really enjoy that. There was Urge Overkill from Chicago. I don't know if you were familiar with them.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. They were, they were never as popular as Smashing Pumpkins, but they were kind of in at that same time, I think they got big because they were used in one of Tarantino's movies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like from the 90s?
Yeah.
Was it
that
Jackie
girl.
Brown?
No.
Pulp Fiction?
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction.
You'll be a woman soon, Doom,
if I heard it, I'd probably know it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They had a big album here.
What was your role in the movie? We never finished that.
Oh, I did stunts.
You did stunts?
I did stunts.
Just from talking to somebody. Was he a writer, a producer,
He
director?
was the stunt director of the movie.
Oh, and he's like, you're young. You look
He's
fit.
like, you look like one of the guys. He's like, are you afraid of like, guns and crashing cars? I'm like, no, I'll do anything you
Can I
want.
blow something up?
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Where was it filmed at?
This was done, my scenes were on right around the cultural center in downtown.
Yeah.
So
on
in
Michigan Avenue?
yeah, like right on Michigan Avenue. And there's
Okay.
like an alley right next to the cultural center.
Yeah.
So right there, we did a bunch of scenes there. We did some stuff on. Actually, they built a studio, like a sound stage, at some CPS building on the like near Western and 35th Street around there.
Okay.
Somewhere in McKinley Park.
Yeah.
So there we did a lot of indoor stuff over there. But yeah, it was cool.
How long did you do it for?
I got about a week's worth of work.
Did you meet Mel Gibson at all?
Yeah, and this is I kind of learned the hierarchy of like movie making and stuff. So it was fun because I got to hang out with all of these movie. This is big time movies. This was Mel Gibson at his height at that.
Oh, he's huge. At 97, you
Oh,
said?
yeah.
Oh, Mel Gibson was huge in 97.
Yeah. Braveheart and
Before Lethal Weapon 4.
Yeah, all of that stuff. He was a movie star.
Yes.
You couldn't get any bigger than Mel Gibson.
Conspiracy Theory.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was right off of all of that.
I used to watch all those movies when I was a kid. So
yeah, in Conspiracy Theory, when that there's a scene where he gets pushed down the stairs in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. So the guy who's sitting in that wheelchair is the guy who hired me.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
because
hilarious.
he was his personal stuntman, a guy named Mick Rogers. So he was Mel Gibson's personal stuntman for all of that. For Braveheart, he coordinated all the Braveheart fights.
Wow, and he hired you.
And he hired me. So Mel Gibson was working with the who's who of Hollywood. Like he was working with the best. So his stunt team was like the best stunt team in Hollywood.
In the world, probably.
Yeah, these guys were all, it was fun hanging out with them this week because you would just hear story after story. There was these shows there was a show called The Fall Guy. It was on, like ABC show. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, it was a really popular show. It was about a stuntman. And the stuntmen that I was working with, they had worked on that show because her dad was like he was
it's
the
like a lineage thing.
Yeah.
It's a family thing.
It's all hereditary. It's all like who you know.
It's of course.
And they were all just they were just telling stories because other people were asking. I was just, one thing I learned very early on is just listen.
Yeah.
Don't get in the way. Just listen, and they'll let you hang out. Don't be a pest. Just listen. And and these kids were telling stories about, on their, they would get out of high school and then go down to the movie set, and then they would do stunts. They would crash cars, jump, and then
it's
they
like
go.
Every kid's dream.
I
always wanted to be a stuntman.
Oh my God! And they were living that, man, and so like, later on, I kind of tracked some of these guys, and yeah, they were like in all the big, all the big shows, all the big movies.
That's so funny.
But anyway, they because the stuntmen get to eat at the big table with the stars of the movie.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Why is that? I would think they'd sit at the kids' table.
Oh, they're doing all the dangerous work. So like the movie stars actually kind of like the stuntmen, right? Because the stuntmen make them look good. So they're just kind of like, they're kind of like made guys because they're coming in and they're like, okay,
they do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, you're going to do the stuff that might get me killed.
Yeah.
And so like, you get to eat on real plates and they serve you food. And, because I was one of the stunt guys, I got to sit at the big table and hear all of the gossip and the real talk.
With all their big wigs. Huh?
With all the big wigs.
What was that like?
It was fun. It was really fun. I really caught the bug at that. I'm like, oh my God, I really want to do
I'm going to Hollywood.
I would love to do this. Yeah, for a couple of years. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I remember I think I got fired at the bike shop for a couple of weeks.
Why?
Because I didn't show up.
Because you were doing the stuff.
Because I was doing a movie, and I just, I think at first I was kind of, it was okay leaving, but this was like the middle of the summer. It was like
peak season.
Yeah, this is peak season. I just disappeared to go do a movie.
Did you tell them?
Yeah. The boss knew.
Did you say like a client came in and offered me this thing? Can I do it for a week?
Well, it happened right kind of like during the day. So as soon as he left, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be in a movie. It's like that kind of thing, And
Did you get a chance to talk or say hi to Mel Gibson at all?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like every day, like by the end, it was like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Hey, how you
oh,
doing,
he
Joe?
smokes like a fiend. I mean, I don't think he ever said, I don't know if he recognized me by name, but at some point he knew that, he's like this guy who just came out of a bike shop, right?
So funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a wild story.
Yeah, it was a great time.
What were some of the stunts you were doing? Like, were they intense? Was it dangerous?
Some stuff was cool. Like crashing, they buckle you into a car and you crash into another car head first,
Is it like extra padding and seatbelts and stuff in there, or is it just a normal
There
car?
was extra seatbelts and stuff.
Like like a cross seatbelt?
Yeah. Yeah, but
That's
the
it,
rest of it
though?
was just brace yourself,
Oh
and-
my God.
Yeah. And then they were shooting shooting guns, like Tommy guns, like
Blanks.
They were blanks, but they were they were shoot blanks.
They still explode and shoot.
Yeah, and I remember when I was shooting those, the way they do it is in order for the like if they're shooting the scene, you want those bullet holes to appear like you're shooting. You're shooting into the side of a car.
Mm-hmm.
You want those holes to show up. Well, what I learned was that those holes, they make the holes first.
Yeah.
And then they put a little charge in there, and then they bondo it over it, and then they paint the side of the car. And so when you're shooting, they're hitting those little switches, and those little bondo things are shooting out. They pop those little charges. Well, when that bondo shoots out, it can pepper you, your hand and stuff. Yeah, and I mean, like actually make you bleed. And so when I was shooting, like I got peppered by all of that stuff, and it was kind of amusing because I mean, there was blood and I had these little cuts on my hand, but everything stopped. It's like, stop, medic.
You're like, I'm fine.
I'm fine. This is this happens at the bike.
Cool. It's part of the movie.
Yeah, it happens at the bike shop every day, but everything stops so that they could come out and
Yeah, because at the end of the day, what
hand.
people who are viewers and patrons of film don't realize, it's a job. They have unions, they have hours, they have lunches, they have X amount of breaks. So like, if you get hurt on any job, they still bring in medics and they don't want you to sue. Same as there.
Yeah.
There's no difference.
Everybody has a specific job. I remember they needed the painter. They were like, oh, there was some sort of glare for the on one of the windshields of the car, and everything stopped, and they're painter, and everybody was waiting, and this one guy comes, and he's got a matte spray paint, just clear like matte, and he just sprays it over the window. It like took 2 seconds, right?
Gets rid of the glare.
Yeah, and then that was it.
That's it.
That was it. But that was
That's so funny.
Everybody stopped to wait for the union painter to come and do his job. And
What's the name of this movie?
Payback.
I need to watch it.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
So I could see you in it if I watch it. If I keep an eye, like I can kind of tell it's you.
Yeah, you'd have to know. I mean, I think if you saw the guy that I was doubling and then you kind of pay attention, you might see me.
I'm good at this.
You might see me.
I take pride in my ability to
Back of
analyze
me
the
and
movies.
My hand and
That's
some
so
stuff
funny.
there. Yeah, but I get a credit at the end of the movie. Yeah,
You saw it? Did you see it in theaters when it came out?
Oh yeah.
And you saw your name on there?
Oh yeah, that was sweet, and it's on there. I mean, I still get some residuals from this.
Are you
thing
serious?
Every year, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think
What is it, like $5? What could you possibly get every year after all these years?
I think it pays for my union dues pretty much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I'm in the Screen Actors Guild off of that.
Yeah. Have you been picketing as of late?
You know what? I vote. I'm not kidding.
Are you kidding? You do one movie 26 years ago, and you're still like, I'm in the Actors Guild.
Well, you know what? It gets you into the guild, and then
That's hysterical. You got a lot of cards. That's so funny. SAG, look at you, Joe Gaspar. That is so funny. Actor, performer, Chicago, member since '97.
Yeah.
Expires. Hey, expires this year. What do? Do you get a new one?
yeah, I pay my dues. I get a new one.
This is so funny.
So I'm in the guild. Yeah,
I love it.
So whenever it's like I still carry it around because
It's funny.
It's a funny.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing. but it just reminds me of that time. You know, it was like
that's cool. It's a great story.
Oh, like that was a really good one.
Adventurous thing to do. Like we're so random.
It was really random because I'd always wanted to do it, and then it just kind of
oiling a chain. You want to be in a movie? All right.
I'm like, yeah. So. Well, I mean, it's so many things like that out of that bike shop, you know, and I think that's why, in a lot of ways, I'm like, I got to keep doing this. You know, it's like I just got too much.
When you were big in doing bikes in the 90s, was Lance Armstrong big yet?
Yeah.
I don't know like when he got kind of big.
Early 90s. So
so when you were in Spain, he was big.
I met him in Spain.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You met Lance Armstrong?
Yeah. Well, there weren't a lot of Americans racing bicycles in Spain at that time.
Did you race each other in Spain?
I think we did one race together, but he was in the pros, and I think I did one race where he was in the race as well. Wow. But at the World Championships in '92,
Joe, you gotta write a book.
Hang out with them. Yeah,
I got to write a book. You have stories. I haven't heard them all yet.
Yeah, no.
A lot of we're only in the '90s still.
Yeah, that's in the '90s.
We haven't left the '90s in like me talking.
No, I know. Those they were great, man. I just always said yes to anything.
You had one hell of a '90s decade.
So
you're racing with Lance Armstrong, dancing with Dennis Rodman, acting with Mel Gibson.
I did
changing Oprah's bike.
Yeah,
I mean the list goes on.
Yeah, that's see. I mean, I'm not. I guess when you put it that way, it's kind of interesting.
What have I done with my life? No, that's so funny.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's just stuff that I've done. I don't know.
It's all random too. You're just like you said yes to something. It just so happens that these things happen.
I just said yes to everything.
Yeah,
you know, it's just a yes.
I do know. Just how I live my life.
Yeah,
it's never disappointed, to be honest.
No,
I just can't believe sometimes in 1 week the things I do. I'm like, I'm so glad I say yes. I mean, it's stressful. It's a lot, but I'm like, this is really fun. Unique things that most people aren't doing.
It's like being here. It's like saying yes to you. You know, it's just like, yeah, I'll go do it. Why not, man? Let's let's go have a little fun. You know, see what happens. So,
yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So you're okay. So you did bike racing. Then you come back. You're racing, or you're working at the bike shop.
Mm-hmm.
What's like the next thing? Now let's get to the aughts. What goes on next in life? You're 30 now.
So So 30 was a big turning point for me because 30, you know, I was at the shop. That late 90s party scene was. I mean, I burned red hot.
I
know, like it was. Yeah, it was hardcore, and it was a lot of partying. It was a lot of everything that entails, you know, the drinking, the partying,
smoking,
everything, you know, it was like, I said yes, you know, and I had a couple of running mates that were a lot of fun, you know, and nobody ever said no, you know, like everybody, we were like gremlins, you know, it was just like,
were psychedelics big in that scene? Like acid and mushrooms and
stuff?
There
were, there was a time when we at the bike shop wanted the owner to drug test us because we wanted to know what everybody's count was at the bike shop.
Deliberately?
So we wanted, because a place had opened up down the street that did like drug testing for teenage kids and for people, and they had opened like some sort of like a storefront where you can go get, tested.
Yeah. That's so funny.
And so when they opened up, you know, I think they had brought like coupons down or something down to the bike shop. And there was a time where we were trying to convince the owner of the shop to drug test everybody in the store.
Deliberately.
Just to see what, you know, just out of curiosity. But, you know, not all the stories were great. You know, there's some stories out of that. Yeah. I mean, you know, along the way, you lost, you know, there were people pass away. People pass
away. When you live that way, when you live in that world, people die. They do.
Yeah. I mean, accidents, not necessarily drug overdoses. In some cases, you know, people who were just really drunk and hit their head on a curb riding a bike, and you know, other people that had children that, you know, they probably shouldn't have had a child under those circumstances, you know, and so just a lot of, you know, cautionary tales.
Yeah.
So when you get to, you know, when I got to 29, 30, I'm like, okay, this has been a great run, but you know,
time to dial it back.
Time to dial it back. It was just kind of a point in my life there where you're just like, you know that you've gotten away with a lot of really good stuff, and maybe it's time to start dialing it back. And also, it coincided with meeting my wife. So,
Okay.
and so, I met her right around that time, 29, 30 years old. We'd been kind of flirting around with each other, and that started a whole different period. Yeah, a whole different chapter in my life, So I was working at the bike shop there for, I continued to work at the shop for another year or two. And then we had the opportunity to start a business. She was in the marketing world, and she'd actually worked for some huge music promoters here in the city of Chicago.
Oh, okay.
In the Hispanic music world.
Okay.
So she was doing the biggest Mexican and Spanish language acts in the world were coming through her. She had done a Selena concert. She had done Juan Gabriel, you name it. Like from Mexico, like the biggest acts, she was involved in the production. She was working for.
What about that one band that just came to Sox Park? It's like acronym. It's like 3 letters. They just came popped up.
Rebelde.
I think so. They were just here like a month ago.
They were just here. Yeah,
it was nuts. It was the loudest thing I've ever heard.
Well, the equivalent of that, but back in those days. So,
okay. I see. Back in the 90s.
Back in the 90s, yeah, the big bands at that time, the big acts at that time. So she had been working with that, with some producers, promoters.
Does she still do that kind of stuff?
Not anymore. She's still working in the marketing and agency world, but she's out of that side of it.
I was gonna say, it sounds like I should pick her brain about something. You know what?
Yeah. Well, she knows a lot about that world, and we had the opportunity, like in the early 2000s, to get involved with soccer because she was working for Coca-Cola at the time and doing some promotional work with the Mexican national team, and this was kind of when the mortgage thing was happening here in the United States. So it was started. This was even earlier than that. This was starting. There was a lot of money being made in the mortgage business here, and so some of these guys were getting into the concert and soccer world, bringing in some of their favorite teams, and we met some people that were bringing some Mexican soccer teams in. They needed someone to produce their soccer events for them. And we didn't know anything about soccer, but we could learn, and so we, they asked Rita if she could help, and she said yes. We said yes, and we learned how to produce soccer games. So for a time we were producing soccer games in the city. We were like renting Soldier Field. At Soldier Field. Yeah.
You and your wife?
Me and my wife. Yeah. Me and my wife and my friends from the bike shop and anybody that I knew.
Wait, that's so expensive. How do you just rent Soldiers Field?
It turns out that you just go there and you rent Soldiers Field. If you got the money, you can rent Soldiers Field.
Where do you get the funding to do that?
Well, we were working with these people that got into the promotion business. They were mortgage.
They had funny money.
They had fun money.
Hilarious.
Yeah. They were bringing. Yeah, they were
hollow money.
They were making a lot of money at the time, and they loved soccer. And they decided they wanted to bring their favorite soccer teams from Mexico and have them play here in Chicago.
Do you still know any of these people?
Yeah.
Do they like music festivals?
I could talk to them about some of that stuff. I think that, I think they're a lot more conservative these days. And
well, luckily for me, I got all the connections. I know how to make it cheap.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. You could do it for, nickels and dimes.
Oh, yeah. I already have, we'll talk off mic, but I have a spreadsheet of exactly how much money I need. I just don't have it because I'm not rich, but
it's a tricky.
I got everything else, just not that.
It's a tricky business. And I mean, what I learned along the way from all of that is that it's a really nasty business.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are big promoters who will they'll do a night, they'll learn of your concert. And they will plan specifically to throw another concert that night just to put you out of business because you're so, you're small. You can't take a loss, right?
I can't take a loss, but they don't know what I know.
Yeah,
they
but
don't know the bands I know.
No.
They couldn't get the type of acts I can get.
But-
they would just get big acts.
But all I'm saying is that they're, like these guys are, that's the kind of business that you're in where like the bigger guys, they'll just like, okay, you're going to throw something on the 19th. I'm going to water your event down so much and you're going to lose so much money that you can't do another. You're not going to have money left to do another one. I can continue to do them, So, I mean, I learned I learned like a really, I was like, oh.
That's very nefarious.
But it was just kind of a dog-eat-dog world, I don't know what the scene is like these days, but at least at that time, there were people did not like competition. The big guys did not like.
I could see it not being as bad, but still having elements of that because that's what a lot of business is like. Yep. But I'm not a businessman, and I'm not really scared of anything.
Yeah. I don't think you have. I don't think that you. I don't think that you have anything to fear. This is something apart from all of that. But just that the world of the world of promoters.
Absolutely.
I through that business, and luckily, for the most part, we're doing it with other people's money. Not necessarily ours. All we were doing was we were putting the party together.
Dream.
The
dream is use someone else's money.
We were doing other people's money. We were getting the full. We were putting the shows on sale, and we were renting the venues, and we were getting the insurance.
How much were these productions? What would they cost?
Oh, they were easily, $500,000, $750,000. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to pay for the teams to come. First of all, you were getting premier teams from around the world.
Yeah.
A soccer team is huge.
Would they fill up the stadium?
In some cases, if you had the right combination, they could. But some of these teams, they didn't. But even filling the stadium, it kind of evens out because then you'd have kind of flops. You'd have some games that didn't do very well, So, I mean, at the end of the day, if they broke even, I think, after all of their events, that would be I would be surprised, close to it. I think it was a lot of fun along the way. I don't know. I don't think that it was ever a real money maker for the people that were doing it.
They didn't have Messi.
No. I mean, they did have, it was a unique, what they were doing at the time was kind of unique in that they were bringing primarily Mexican teams. Mm-hmm. So, that was kind of a relatively new thing that was happening here where they were bringing these Mexican teams.
This was early 2000s?
Early 2000s.
I actually remember this.
Early mid-2000s at Soldier Field.
You may have met my uncle. My uncle Mark was big up in Pepsi for a bit. And he used to go to a lot of those events. Because I remember him bringing Chicago Fire jerseys and stuff all the time, and he was always doing soccer stuff.
Yeah.
All the time. And I don't remember his position, but a vice president of something high up at Pepsi, and he was always at these events.
Yeah, they were huge. They were huge, not only soccer games, but they were big networking events.
Yeah,
in the Hispanic community.
Absolutely.
It was kind of
and he's Mexican, so it makes because I remember him like, there's soccer events now at Soldiers Field. I remember this in like 2001, 2, 3, 4, and I would be at my grandpa's house, in Gage Park, and he'd go to them when family parties, and I'd see him over summer during the events, and he'd bring me like jerseys. Like it might have been like your events, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it might have been.
Possible,
yeah,
he was at corporate, and it was Pepsi, and he was networking, and he's Mexican.
Yeah, we were doing a lot of them. Up. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if my wife knew him. It was a very small world, at that time, especially at that level. All those people kind of know each other. Mm-hmm. I was more on the operations side. Mm-hmm. My wife handled all the the business side, and I was more involved with the tents and the golf carts and the
army. Way more fun.
The army on the ground. The coolers. I enjoyed that part.
That's the battles, the fun part.
Oh, that was it was great. It was great because you get to learn all about that stuff, and at some point, you're having golf carts delivered to Soldier Field, and you're racing around. You're racing around the guts of Soldier Field on golf carts. What time were you getting
there? Like 2 a.m. to start setting up. Jeez. Probably long days.
On game days, you get there early, and you leave there really late. But what? I mean, it was a thrill.
It was fun.
It was. You had they would literally hand you the keys to Soldier Field. Like a big ring of keys.
I feel like they don't do that now. They just give you the keys.
I think If you rent it, I think they give you the keys.
What
You know,
about security? What if you vandalize stuff?
Well, you're in charge. I mean, you know what? You're on the hook for all of that stuff. But
Well,
I
this
mean,
is pre when they remodeled it.
no, they had already remodeled.
Oh,
This
okay.
was New Soldier Field. This is the way that it is right now.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't. Whoever's renting that place, I mean, first of all, to get in the door and to rent that place, it's not like they're just renting it to anybody. And then you have to have. I mean, it was a significant amount. It was a significant amount of money to rent Soldier Field for a day. And they, they had people certainly checking on things and making sure that you were doing, you weren't doing things that you weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
They were very particular about the grass and walking on the field and things like that.
I bet.
Yeah, they had all sorts of interesting rules about, even the celebrations. Here's a funny one. So for the celebration at the end, when they have those confetti cannons and things like that, because every once in a while we would rent those for some of the bigger events. The confetti, the things that shot out of the big confetti cannons, it couldn't be paper. It had to be made out of Mylar, because the paper would like dissolve and get caught in the grass, and like it would get wet and stuck in there, and they couldn't get it out. But the Mylar, they could vacuum it up, being plastic.
Oh.
But there were very like rules like that.
Yeah.
Like things you would not
Makes
know
sense.
unless you were renting a confetti cannon for Soldier Field.
I get it. I mean, because of DZ Fest, there's stuff in my yard forever that I just couldn't get, like some glitter confetti stuff.
Exactly.
And like it's just there for like a year.
Yeah.
And eventually it just kind of like breaks down or gets picked up by the lawnmower. Eventually,
yeah.
that yard was trashed, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, once a year, right?
Once a year for 10 years plus my whole life. We played football and soccer and sports there all winter. Like we would trash it in the winter because it'd get muddy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was bonfires on bonfires on I mean, I had thousands of bonfires there. I burned everything you could ever think of. And then the festival, and then mini fests and shows and sleepovers and parties. And I mean, family reunions. I mean, it's tens of thousands of people.
I mean, I still have people come through the store. I have one of the posters up. I think I have maybe the 17 poster, one of those. That one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think I have the 17 poster hanging up in there. And, people will see it and they're like, oh man, DZ, that was awesome. And I was like, yeah, you remember that? He's like, yeah, I went to one of them. Or, I think some of your friends are still living in the area. There's still plenty of people that were friends that are living in the area.
Funny.
So, every once in a while I get someone coming through, and some of the customers that are referred over to the show because, Charlie was involved with DZ and lived there for a while.
Yeah.
He used to work at the bike shop. And so, we would promote the event all the time at the shop and a lot of our customers.
That.
Yeah, no, it was, I was always proud of you guys and what you were doing over there. And, being in the neighborhood and down the street.
Down the street. Yeah. So you live in Hickory Hills, but you lived in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And after these events, is that when you wanted to start 2BC? Or is there?
So the event business, the soccer business, grew into an event and marketing business. So from, we started with these soccer games and then we became kind of a event and marketing agency. So we were working with brands and doing programs around the country, kind of these what they call activations, what you'll see like at a football game or baseball game before the event. You'll see all these tents out in front, somebody selling you cell phones or, have some sort of little game and giving you a tote bag and that kind of thing. We would do these promotions with different brands around the country, and often tied to, a lot of events were tied to soccer. There were sponsorships that were part of sponsorships that were tied to some sort of event or traveling event. So you would do it, it would be a multi-city national thing. You'd be in Boston and Chicago and New York and LA. You'd organize all of that. You'd have vans and trucks and promotional teams at each one of these events. So you were dealing with logistics and hiring temp staff at different venues. And then you had some, you'd have part of the team that would fly out to organize and manage those people on site.
Okay.
And all the stuff that went along with it, because you would be giving away thousands of, keychains or soccer balls or
Yeah.
various things,
Yeah.
So somebody had to get all that stuff made. Someone has to get all that stuff from China and warehouse it and distribute it.
Is it kind of like when the Sox will hand out stuff at the door? Like that? Like all those
Yeah.
random things, a hat.
Yeah, if you see like AT&T or somebody
something.
out there, right? Like when you're walking into a stadium and you'll see like, some juice company or somebody's handing out something there right at a tent.
Yeah.
That's usually not Coca-Cola. That's usually a company that, like, say, Coca-Cola hires to do all of that
and
work.
they would hire you.
Yeah, they would hire someone like us to organize all of that, right? Because there's a lot of logistics that go into that. Somebody has to get a van, and somebody has to get tents, and someone has to get tables and table skirts and zip ties and a mic and,
the whole thing, yeah.
3 or 4 people to stand there and hand all that stuff over and the T-shirts. And, I mean, there was just a lot, I learned a lot about that stuff. And that's kind of what we were doing, and my wife was kind of the brains of the operation. And I was a little bit of the muscle, as much as I could be, get the tents down there, get everybody lined up, and lend a hand on that side.
How many years did you do like that physical part of the events? Like you personally?
As long as we had the agency, she would handle all the account side, and I would deal with a lot of the logistical side, the truck rental, the tents, the getting some of that stuff made, moving all of the assets around and things like that. Sometimes you'd have to rent a warehouse or a place to park vehicles. In some cases you would have these huge, like at some point we had a mobile kitchen, that we were touring around with.
Really?
We had a chef that we were bringing to different events, and he would cook and do cooking demonstrations. And you have to, you hire a driver, and you had somebody driving this mobile kitchen around the country.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to fly someone there for the events. You'd have like a celebrity chef, and he'd be doing cooking demonstrations outside of a football game or something, and so, just organizing all of that stuff.
Wow.
I mean, it was fun. I learned a lot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it was my wife's business. It's what she was doing.
Yeah.
As, that was her career, but, I was able to kind of learn all about that stuff.
Absolutely. It's a wild side of things, like the production side of events is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, and then when the mortgage bubble burst and the economy took a tanked in 2008.
2008, yeah.
Around 2008, all those advertising budgets were slashed.
Oh, yeah.
So that was like the first thing to get, the plug got pulled on a bunch of programs and things that we had on the books. So at that time we were running the agency. I was still dabbling in bikes. So I was like maybe, a day or two a week at the bike shop, if that.
Where was this bike shop at that point?
Cycle smithing.
Oh, you're still there.
So
okay.
yeah, I was still there. So I still kind of kept up a presence there as much as I could. I was never 100% away from bikes. But I certainly wasn't there full time during those years. And when at some point we had to make a decision. It's like, do we continue with this? There wasn't enough money coming in to support, 2 of us, and she was getting better offers to go back into the corporate world. I think it was just putting a lot of stress on, the situation at home wasn't great. And so she decided that she was going to take a better offer, and I decided I was going to go back to do what I love to do, which was bikes. And I went back to work full time at the bike shop,
Okay.
But after a couple of years at the shop, I was like, I realized I was a little too old at that point to just be working at a bike shop. And decided to go off and do my own thing. And when I did it, I decided I was going to be out in the southwest suburbs.
Why there?
I looked in the South Loop originally, You know, like,
Sounds expensive.
yeah, well, at that time, it wasn't what it is now. So,
Okay.
I mean, there was still kind of virgin territory there. You know, it was like the stuff that you see there now wasn't there yet. You know, there were plans, or they were talking about doing stuff. They were talking about doing stuff in the South Loop, but there was nothing there yet. So it was still, it wasn't cheap, but it was cheaper. And, you know, you would have been early to that area, and right now you'd probably be doing okay had you been able to
Get in then.
yeah, get in then and also keep it going then, you know. But it seemed like a lot of work to me, you know, like in a kind of a risk, because it was still years off, you know, like those apartment buildings, there were plans to, you know, you could kind of see where downtown was starting to
Expanding.
expand a little bit, but it wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like Roosevelt, or, you know, you're like Roosevelt Avenue, or it wasn't what it is now. It was still pretty rough over there, and you know, after 6 o'clock, it was dark and nobody was there. You know,
Yeah.
but that Palos area, the southwest side there, had always been a place that, you know, whenever someone in the city of Chicago bought a mountain bike, the first thing they asked was, "Where do I go ride this thing?" And well, you know, every single bike shop in the city says, "Go to Palos, go to Palos."
It's simple. It's like, you know, State Street? They go, yeah. Go down until you get to Archer around 20th Street. Yeah. And take Archer as far as you can see.
Just follow Archer.
And it just
all
so
the way
happens to take you right to where the first hills happen on the south side of Chicago. You know about like how that was created by the glaciers?
Yeah.
The hills, forest preserves, huge forest preserves, amazing trails, and like it goes from this massive third biggest city in the country to like this amazing oasis out of nowhere. And I was just so lucky to be born right at the end of both. Like where I lived my whole life is like, I never realized, because it was normal. It's normalized to have, I grew up in those forests.
Yeah.
I walked them every day until I moved.
Yeah.
And Willow Springs and that whole area. I worked at UPS for 7 years. I always drove down Archer right there on the Willow Springs Road.
Yeah.
Oh, that place sucked. And I just never realized like the proximity to Chicago, especially down Archer Avenue, and then right there. And
it's a unique area.
Yeah, it's very unique.
You know, so, you know, I was racing bikes in the in the 90s, and I would ride out from Gage Park. And as soon as you get to Hickory Hills, that's when the hills literally started.
Literally hills.
Right at Roberts Road.
Yep.
You know, it's the first incline right up
the first
into
one
those
at
neighborhoods.
87th Street
up
to 80th Avenue there. My house was right on the first hill that you get in when you go to Hickory Hills.
Yeah, those first hills. I mean, that's where you start getting a little bit of elevation. And I mean, for me, like my world would change as soon as I got there. That's like it kind of signaled.
So you would ride out there?
Yeah, I would ride from. Yeah, I was racing bikes, and the only place to go is like, you know, to find hills, you go to Lamont,
which is that direction.
Straight down Archer. Yeah, you go.
That's where
further.
I used to longboard when I was in my teens and 20s. That's where I got messed up. Really badly.
Really?
Oh yeah, broke this wrist, this one, tailbone, shredded a bunch
in
of skin.
Lamont.
Yeah, we would sketch on the back, skeech on the back of a car.
Yeah,
give my friend some gas money, and we would kind of study the streets and learn where we can go down. Okay, that's a good hill. It plans out really well. Around midnight, no one's on the streets in the middle of the week on like a Tuesday. I'm 20 years old. Gave my friend $5. We'd pull us up the hills. We'd let go and just bomb them. And one time we bombed a hill, my friend did not analyze or check out, and I thought he did. And it ended up being a hill. It was on Julia and Main. Went to Main Street and past the high school, and it's just a dead end to the train tracks. And we were going like 60 miles an hour. I mean, we were flying from the top of the hills straight into it. And I had to bail off my board. I tried landing in grass, couldn't do it. I somersaulted like 12 times. My glasses flew off, my socks and shoes flew off. Yeah, again, broke wrists, tailbone. I got banged up. I was messed up. I mean, my tailbone hurt for years.
So you were up at the top of like
we were at
McCarthy,
the very top
right?
as you can go on Vermont, and went all the way down. And we were flying. And I had a really nice longboard, this bamboo board called Loaded. It can handle high speeds. I didn't get speed wobbles because it was a really high-end board. But I got messed up. I should have died. I don't know how I didn't hurt my head. No, I was wearing shorts and T-shirt. I was dressed like this. No helmet, no pads, nothing.
What year was that?
It was May 2010.
Oh, gee.
And I don't know how. I didn't hurt my
That's when, you know what,
core, my
that's
whole
when I
knee.
opened the bike shop.
That was when? May 2010?
May
Really?
2010,
We
yeah.
were driving right past you.
Wow.
That's funny because I would always play at the Ashbury Coffee Shop, and the first time I played there was August 2010. So you must have just opened up.
I just opened. That was the first summer that we were there.
That was my first time playing a show there with my band.
Really?
It was August 2010.
Well, the Ashbury's still there, and
Yeah.
and hopping,
I mean, I
and
used to play
still
there a bunch
attracting
of
the same,
times.
still bands and still young youth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
young me, yeah.
there's still like,
yeah, I used to always go there. Some of my first shows were there when I was a
Really?
teenager in the 2000s. Yeah.
still attracting that crowd. It's still, it's
cool.
just younger,
It always stays between like 15 and 25.
Yeah, those kids are still the same. It's like that age, they're still there. They just
That's
kind of,
good.
it's still drawing in that crowd. I think the Ashbury more so than ever is now like a nighttime venue.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I think it was always kind of a later coffee. It was more of a bar than coffee shop. It is.
Yeah.
It's more of a bar now than it is like coffee shop.
Okay.
Which is great. I mean, they have this evening thing going on there.
Good. Yeah, I used to go
comedy.
to the comedy. I used to always go to comedy night. It was like every Wednesday or Thursday. And it was before 2008 when I would go, so everyone was smoking cigarettes.
Okay, yeah,
inside.
yeah.
Oh my God. I would go to improv night or something.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. I remember I'd have to I would lay on the ground just to avoid the smoke just sitting.
That
It was
really?
so thick and gross. I mean, you remember it.
Yeah.
You were in the 90s.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
remember
every
people
place
were
you went was covered in
yeah.
smoke.
Yeah.
I used to hate that, but it is a little nostalgic, You think of the non-smoking when you walk. Smoking or non? It's like, this is the same building. There's going to be smoke everywhere. Unless you have state-of-the-art ventilation.
Yeah.
We're still breathing in the second.
Oh,
So-
dude, I flew on airplanes when you could still smoke.
oh, that's so disgusting.
You'd smoke in the back in buses,
Oh my God.
yeah.
Airplane one makes no sense. It's like, wait, you're trapped in the air in this vacuum tube.
You could smoke. Like in the back, I remember being,
That's such a bad idea.
first couple of trips to Europe where, people, you go to the back and it was like people drinking and smoking in the
sounds fun.
in the galley. Oh, yeah, I mean, it was
I mean,
it was very movie like
Yeah.
back then. You
Yeah.
go back there and you're just like, wow, this is where the party goes on back here.
Oh,
so.
man. So you picked 2BC in Willow Springs because that's where you used to go biking out there. That's a known biking place.
I knew there were bike trails there. I knew the mountain bike trails were there.
Yeah.
So for sure you had kind of a captured audience there.
A lot of them, yeah.
And I've been stuck out there without an inner tube and where I needed some supplies. I knew there was a paved bicycle path across the street. I'm like, wow, there's
The one parallel to the river, right?
yeah, the one that goes that trail goes all the way to Starved Rock.
Really?
The I&M Canal Trail, yeah.
How far? Have you done that?
Yeah, I did it this summer. Yeah,
Really?
It's
How many
about
miles is
80
that?
miles.
80, right, yeah, because I was thinking about going camping there. So yeah, 80 miles.
It's about 80 miles.
So you went there and back, so 160?
We just went there and then we caught some cars back. We had some friends meet us there.
okay.
Friends and family met us there, and then we drove back. Because I went with some people that weren't real cyclists. I don't know that I would have attempted it, this year. I don't think I had
You think my 1970 Schwinn Continental could make it, the red one?
I would probably, you know what, with some better tires, you could probably do it, but there's probably a better choice.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm stubborn. I'm like, I got this. I could do this.
If
And
I
I'm
put,
like,
you know what, if I put better tires on that bike, you could make it down there.
okay.
Because except for 13 miles of the first 13 miles, which are paved, the rest of it is all like limestone, like crushed limestone.
Oh,
So,
that sounds harder.
I mean, it's fine.
It's fine?
It's crushed. It's easy to ride on.
Okay.
But it's, if you don't have a decent tire, you're going to get flats.
Right.
A lot of flats. So, yeah.
Yeah, you know how I got that bike? You know that old, creepy, gothic looking mansion that was in
Oh,
here?
yeah.
With the bike
Yeah, yeah,
situation?
yeah.
I'm sure did you go check out those bikes?
Yeah. Did you go to the big sale that they had there?
Did you check it out though?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Charlie obviously told me about it. He always knows about these things. And I went there, and I mean, I've never seen so many bikes in my life. It was thousands of bikes.
Yeah, yeah.
Like literally thousands. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
being sarcastic.
Thousands.
And I don't even know what this person was doing or going through to have lived amongst thousands of bikes in
It's
their house.
insane.
I mean, it's a big house, but it's not that big. It's like that. They were definitely intrusive, these bikes, into this person's
Oh yeah, and there's a
life.
lot of junk too.
Yeah.
Like they weren't all like great pieces of they weren't a lot of great bikes there.
No, but that one was great. And Charlie got it for $25.
Oh, nice.
And he gave it to me. He didn't even charge me for it. He's like, I got you a gift. And he like showed up with it.
Oh, awesome.
And I was like, because I went the day before and I was spotting out bikes. I just didn't know what to get. I was overwhelmed. And I don't know that much about bikes. So I just kind of went to check it out. I was like, okay, this is cool. Maybe I'll come back and get it. But the good bikes were selling fast. People found out and
there were people there that went and kind of just like grabbed whatever was good early on. I didn't bother. I just didn't, it's like I got too many projects already. But yeah, I did hear that there were a few, there was some good stuff, but those guys came really early and took everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So for $25, that was worth getting.
Yeah, it's worth the tire.
And I'm pretty sure I was told, I mean, you could take a look. You'd probably know. I'm pretty sure someone said it was around in 1970.
Oh, okay.
Schwinn made in Skokie, right? Is that where they were made?
All over Chicago.
All over Chicago.
So they had all sorts of different factories. They had like the wheel factory, the frame factory, the place where they would make the seats.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, Schwinn was a real Chicago. I mean, they manufactured everything here.
That's crazy because they're like an internationally known brand for bikes, right?
Yeah, they were like the rollerblade of their time. People didn't want a bike; they wanted a Schwinn.
Right.
So it was like, I want a Schwinn. You want a Schwinn? I'm gonna get myself a Schwinn.
See that movie Burn After Reading? The Coen
Oh yeah,
with Brad Pitt when he laughs, and I think it's John Malkovich. He's like, "You think that's a Schwinn?"
Yeah. That was great.
Oh my god!
And
then when he gets shot in the face, he's like happy, and oh my god, what a funny movie! But yeah, and then I put, I got new brakes, brake lines, and tires on it. There's a bike shop down the street, but I can show you after this. But it's got this weird thing going on. It's got this wobble, and the back brake's like rubbing when I pedal.
Okay,
I don't know what's going on.
I'll take a quick peek.
I'm sure you would know
I know
right
my
away.
way around a bike. Yeah.
Only, 30 plus years of experience.
There's a really good way to, I mean, you can take the serial number off that bike. It's probably right on the head tube, the part where the fork goes up. It's either there or somewhere in the back of the bike. But there are all sorts of databases where you can go and reference that number, and it'll tell you down to the week when that bike was made. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it's heavy. There are definitely much better bikes.
Yeah.
But it's like to have a very inexpensive piece of Chicago history, like a real OG one. It's like I gotta keep it.
Yeah,
why not?
it really is. Even now you can find these bikes because they were in every garage in Chicago. Just tons of them.
Yeah,
and I've got some at the store right now. I have probably more than a half a dozen of that era of bike just sitting around the shop because whenever they come along, I get them donated or people will come and drop them off. I hate to, it's like I feel obliged to kind of keep them until I can at least get them into the right hands. Somebody wants to restore it or do something with it. They're not worth a lot of money to me to like fix them and try and sell them used. But, for somebody who wants a little project, someone who, like you, wants to have a nice piece of history.
Yeah, I don't mind the resistance it gives, the weight of it.
Yeah.
I'm all about...
Oh, you ride this bike a lot, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen you doing some stuff around town where you're riding your bike. This is the bike you ride, right?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, they ride great.
I don't mind that it's heavy, and 'cause people always like, why don't you get them? It's like, dude, I ain't weak. Like, I can handle the weight.
It's a little extra
not
weight.
to sound obnoxious, but like, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not like I'm not old, and I'm not a little kid. I can lift up the bike and move it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
to me. It's fun.
That's the kind of bike that I started racing bikes with.
Really?
Yeah. Somebody gave my dad a bike. Like when in my late teens, I was getting myself in a lot of trouble, and a friend of my dad's said, "Hey, I got this bike, and maybe your son would like it. Maybe it'll help him get it, get his head straight."
What kind of trouble?
I was I was heavily involved in the graffiti hip hop scene, the early graffiti and hip hop scene.
How did we miss this? We went through 30 years and you skip over this?
This was the early teens. I didn't know how far we were going back, but yeah, this was like the early hip hop and graffiti scene in the city of Chicago.
So what year are you thinking here?
This was like from the age of 13 through 17.
Oh, so like 80. 83, 84?
83, 84.
Oh, so that's like
80.
early hip hop.
Yeah.
Hip hop hit Chicago already by that point? Because I know it was in New York.
Yeah, 83. By 83, we were down in, that goes back to the kind of that radio station that I was in, that was happening there. And I mean, yeah, breakdancing and hip hop was already becoming, we were aware of it.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of a thing, bubbling at that time. And certainly by the time I got to high school, I was already in like a graffiti crew,
Were you going to Gage Park High School?
I went to Bogan.
Bogan, okay.
I went to Bogan first, and by then, by my first year in Bogan, I was heavily involved in the graffiti, hip hop, rap, breakdancing
dangerous
scene.
school at the time?
No, it was actually like technical high school. It was a computer technical high school.
Oh, wow.
So their big focus was like computers. Like, had I paid attention, I probably could have
been a computer scientist.
I could have done something really
You'd be a different
cool.
life. But then you wouldn't have all these amazing stories.
I wouldn't have. See, there you go.
You'd have been like, and then I went to ITT and got out at 22 and started my office job, worked my way up to mid-management, and that's it.
Yeah.
And here we are. We'd be boring now.
Yeah, probably you wouldn't be talking to me.
Probably more gray hair from stress of trying to maintain, keeping up with Joneses.
Absolutely. Oh, it was boring, man.
Boring.
I had the computer class, and I was just like,
it's cool. It's just boring.
Yeah, you get the computer to do a smile for you. Like after the whole class, 30 minutes of typing, it'd be like, just like pages of code.
I'm grateful we have it because without it, we couldn't have this podcast.
Yeah.
Couldn't have our internet.
No, it was pretty.
It's just not for me.
No, it was like I'm like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. But yeah, it was an interesting scene back then.
I bet.
Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of graffiti art.
Yeah. I was doing graffiti and tagging, and I was running around with breakdancing groups. And
wow, that's so mid-'80s. It's not even funny.
Yeah, it was cool. And I was in real trouble. I was like skipping school and staying out late, and I was a lot of trouble for my parents. And like at some point,
Do you have siblings?
I have 3 younger sisters.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was saying, if you had an older sibling, they might have tried to set you straight.
But I was 4. When I think back at it, I was like 14, 15 years old and staying out really late. Like I'm talking like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, me too. I just wasn't doing that kind of stuff. But I had my ways of doing it in my neighborhood as well.
I would stay out really late, and like, by the time I hit 17, I was starting to get into what could have been, I think like most of us in that scene, we knew that once you hit 18, like trouble with the law got really serious. Like
you can get a lot of trouble.
You can get in real trouble.
When you're 14, they'll probably just tell you your parents come get you.
Yeah, they call your parents and stuff like that. So you get caught tagging or bombing a bus or destroying some CTA stop. Some train stop. But once you got 17, 18 years old, it got there was real trouble. Ahead, you knew that, and I was approaching that age, it's just like, oof. But luckily that's when I got a bike, this bike came into my life.
So a bike like kind of changed your life.
Yeah, it sure did. I was into bikes.
Bike?
I was into bikes when I was like a young kid. I always loved the bike. I used to ride until my hands were like, shaking and stuff. I ride my bike but then, you hit those adolescence, I guess, and you just start getting different. I got into graffiti and hip hop and running around, and and it took me away from the bike. But then I was able to find my way back, naturally to around 17, around 16, 17 years old, and then led me on this journey that I guess I'm still on right now. Yeah.
Were these experiences with tagging and graffiti, was it gang related or just like
No. It was hip hop graffiti. Actually, so that's one thing that I don't think that people are really aware of. When you think of hip hop and stuff now, that early hip hop scene was we were nerds.
Yeah.
We were artsy hood nerds.
Yeah.
We were drawing, we were dancing, and we were into music, but we had to be cool. You didn't want to be in a gang. You would battle, you would fight, you would dance fight.
Yeah.
Right?
You didn't want to really fight.
You didn't really want to fight. I mean, it was a way to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
It was just kind of survival tactics,
But
even
misunderstood by like adults and stuff.
yeah,
I didn't get it.
Yeah, the early hip hop graffiti scene was really just, a bunch of artsy kids. I mean, it was just kids that were not into the gang scene, I think it was partly survival skills that we learned because you got to dress it, you kind of dressed a certain way where the gangbangers instantly identified you as not a gangbanger. So in the hood, you were like, you had a look. You're running around with a duffel bag and a trench coat, and there was you had kind of an alt look, hood look, and the gangbangers would leave you alone, because you weren't trouble to them.
Yeah,
you weren't.
You almost like fit in.
You didn't fit in. You were one of those guys. You were one of the hip hop guys. You had big shoelaces on. You weren't a gangbanger. You were one of those hip hop dudes. So people would leave you alone. You could run around in your crew, but you still had kind of a cool thing going on. You had a thing going on. You had this artsy thing going on. I mean, it was different. At some point, it got taken over by the whole, East Coast, West Coast, the guns and all that stuff
90s,
came. Yeah, then it got into that. It kind of took over that hip hop street scene. But early on, it was much. It was a pretty peaceful scene. There was not a lot of fighting. There wasn't a lot of drinking. There wasn't drugs. It was pretty nerdy when I think about it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like just markers and arts and spray paint and dancing and it was just people getting together and doing artsy stuff.
Did you ever continue to do any artistic stuff with painting or drawing?
No, but I'm drawn. Some of the design stuff, like when we had the event business, like, designing posters and designing flyers and doing some of the layout and all that stuff. I mean, I've always been drawn to it. I'm always, and I have a bit of an eye for it, I guess, At one of the bike shops I worked at early on, I worked with an art director from a big ad agency who,
Don Draper? No.
Kind of.
He was a creative director.
Yeah.
Did you watch Mad Men?
I didn't watch it.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, there's so many cultural references to it that you kind of know it.
You kind of have to.
Yeah.
That's funny, though.
But he recognized the fact that I had kind of an eye for some of that stuff and tried to encourage me to get into that business, into the advertising business. I just didn't understand it.
I could not have imagined you in advertising.
Yeah, it
is an interesting business.
On the art side of it, I didn't realize there was something called a creative art director who just told people what to do.
Yeah,
and I thought you had to do it. Like, I thought I needed computer skills. I didn't realize that I could just go in and tell them, I want the font bigger. Yeah. I want it more orange.
You just have a vision you could see about how to accompany the catch line and the tagline of the creative director, where they come up with the sayings and what things should look like. And the art director tells their people what to do. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, advertising. The show was amazing, and I have a appreciation for it, but I have massive disdain for advertising, like huge disdain for how it's done, like corporate advertising, like what you see in commercials, like, for instance, like Sports Kings, like like DraftKings or whatever. People I know that used to love sports, they don't really care anymore. It's all, they'll vote or root against their own team just so they could win. It's all about winning on their phone. They're not really paying attention as like a true fan. They just want to win. It's creating a culture of gambling. It's probably creating a lot of gambling addicts because now you can just do it from phone. You don't have to go to Atlantic City or Vegas anymore. Yeah, you can just go DraftKings. Okay, boom. It's problematic as can be. There's no way around it. And then obviously pharmaceutical companies, their advertising, don't even get me started.
Yeah,
how dangerous that is. And then alcohol. It's like, why don't we have advertisements for weed? We can have advertisements for alcohol. Alcohol is great, but it's dangerous as can be.
Yeah,
it's probably the worst of all the drugs we have that's legal.
And a lot of money.
And yet it's somehow we advertise for it.
It really drives a lot of
much.
Everything.
Drives everything. It's
having been in a little bit in that business, I mean, a lot of it was alcohol related. A lot of the money, it pays for a lot of careers. A lot of people make their money off of those companies.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to like a productive advertisement. Like if you had like advertising for your shop or DZ Fest or just things like that, that's great. But when it like that big kind of nefarious corporate world, I'm just like, it's just so frustrating to see. Exactly what it is they're trying to do, trying to get you to buy their products, billion-dollar corporations. You're like, oh my God.
Although, right now, with everything that's going on, it's funny. Those big companies are trying to figure out, what it is that Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I do that? Yeah. Right? How do I do, how do I get in on that right now?
Yeah,
they're trying, the tables have been turned a little bit on some of those big companies because now they're scratching their heads like they're like, what is that?
It's constantly being turned on them.
Yeah.
They're like, streaming services with no commercials, and then they're like TikTok, fast action swiping, and then they're like, Mr. Beast and big podcasts, these massive podcasts now, they're just like, what do we do? Like, how do you, it's like, you're in trouble. I don't know the state of like standard television and cable over the next 20 years.
Yeah, I mean they resort to just buying these people out, right? Or
they try
to, but some of these people are so big that they don't have to,
they don't
right?
Have
like
to
Mr. Beast, you got offers to get bought out.
Billions.
He's like, you know what?
Right?
I don't need that. I'm worth more than that.
I think he said it'd have to be like at least 20 or 30 billion to buy him out.
Somebody offered him in the billions already.
I think it was a couple billion, and he said no, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, and he 20, 25, 26 or something?
25, 26
Who
years old.
turns down billions of dollars at that age? I mean,
It's amazing.
think about you and me. I mean, I would be like, I could do that.
Yeah. I really like that kid.
I respect that.
I really respect what he does because it's like I can't really wrap my head around it, but the fact that he still has all of his friends around him, that all of his friends have been able to like.
Seems like they have a lot of fun.
They have a lot of fun, and then they've all gone off to start their own channels and their own things apart, where they all have like a separate stream of income besides him. So it's not like they're just mooching off of him.
That's cool.
But he's more than happy to bring them along on their adventure.
Rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah, and
that's cool.
He just has fun with his boys.
And to have your own thing where you don't get bought off, but you make enough money to say like no, to have your own thing, like you have your own thing. I do. You can't put a price tag on it sometimes.
No,
even with any of the chaos and headaches, it's like no, like I created this, my thing, and if you can make enough money to live off of it, it's so worth not like selling out to it. It's just something sacred about it. You're like, this is my idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even when you're pulling your hair out sometimes.
Absolutely.
But it's all for it's just for your own. It's like it's something like you said, something you created, and it's like also the fact that there's nobody else but you, right? It's like no one's gonna come and save you.
No,
that's it. It's like it's me.
Just you.
You're the last one there. You're at that after the concerts. Once everyone's gone, you're the last one in the yard picking stuff up.
Yep, and the streets. And I'm like, everyone's like, this was great. It's like I got to take all this stuff down as soon as possible. Holy cow! Yeah. And I'm fried, and I just put this together. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, and you got no choice.
No choice. Yeah, you just have to do it.
So sometimes that's actually really nice because you're just like, I got no choice, and it's like you're comforted in the fact that
you have to.
You have to do it. I got to do it. No one else is going to do it. Nobody's coming in to save me. So
no lifelines, no lifeboats. Yeah, but that's the again full circle. That's the call to the adventure.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to have an idea or come up with an idea and then like grow it and have it get bigger in your head. You tell people about it. Most of them go like, that's crazy. I don't think you should do that. But you kind of ignore them. And then
you have to.
I mean, I don't think I've listened to much advice.
No, but you know why? Because most people don't get it.
No, they don't.
The only people that get it are the people that do it.
Yeah.
Other people don't get it at all. They don't get it. And, one thing was as I've gotten older, early on, you get told anybody can do it. Anybody. And now that I'm older, I'm like, no, Not everybody can do it.
Not everybody can.
I know a lot of people.
If they could, they would.
If they could, they can't. They can't. There's just some people that are not cut out to do it.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the biggest things that you've been led on by a lot of. Oh, anybody can do it. I'm like, no.
Follow your dreams, Mary. It's like, no. I agree with you. I mean, I'm only 33, but in the condensed amount of insanity I've lived the last 15 years as an adult with what I've done, what I'm still doing, I've also realized that because I've had a lot of people ask like for advice, other DIY collectives and galleries and events and just smaller stuff, asking like, oh, we want to try to do what you did, like advice. And I'm like, I mean, I don't even know where to begin with the advice. I mean, I could start off with saying like definitely have a good crew with you. I mean, that's also important.
Yeah, it's really important.
Put all of the money you have into it, like live for it. Like you have to cut out every sense of normalcy, every sense of going out and dating and drugs and alcohol and all the things you'll spend money on. Don't put it towards that. Unless you're rich, but most people aren't that are asking me, then you have to put all your money towards that.
Yeah. You almost have to be completely... You have to have like no other choice.
No other choice.
You have no other choice. You're so out there. Yeah,
That is your life, hobby, dream, passion, career. It's everything you'll ever do all in one. You do have to put all your eggs in one basket.
You do.
They tell you not to. But
you have to commit.
Yeah.
You have to commit. I mean, and at some point, if you do it long enough and you stick with it, then eventually you get some of that time back for yourself, and that it starts to really pay off. But those early years, that's it. It's 24 hours a day. You're on all the time.
I'm sure you spent a lot of time at the shop at first.
Yeah, I still am in many ways, still doing a lot of the stuff myself. I have more help these days, but early on, I mean, I would be there all night long. I mean, I would be there all night. I would be, working on bikes. I'd close the door and then I'd start repairing bicycles. And, it was really, really long nights. Thankfully, my wife was pretty understanding. Now she complains that if I'm not home at 6 o'clock for dinner, but before it was like 6 o'clock. I wouldn't close until 7, and then at 7:30 I would start the repair process, and I get home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to remind her that it was like I come home, sleep for a few hours, and then I turn around and go back to the bike shop. So
What time do you close now?
6.
6?
Yeah.
You just leave right away?
Yeah, just, shoot home. So.
And when do you work on the bikes, like the following day?
Yeah, or sometimes, most of the time, like I get caught up. I have a mechanic during the season now. So, I mean, now I have a little bit of help for sure, and I mean, I could use more help, but there's just not a lot of really talented, there aren't a lot of talented bike people out there right now, man. There are not a lot of people that know this business.
There's a broader thing. There's not a lot of people who are teenagers or in their 20s that grew up doing things with their hands. Like I did, like you did.
Yeah.
That's another thing when people ask like, oh, like how do we build our own festival? I'm like, are you gonna do it yourself? Like, yeah. I'm like, are you handy?
You know how to use a
I'm
drill?
Handy.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to brag, but like I grew up doing everything myself.
Yeah.
I know how to use the tools. I built that whole fest with my bare hands.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, if you don't know how to do that, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it's a lot
and
of
it's hard to learn it when you're older. I just grew up with it.
Yep.
I grew up using tools and power tools really young, so it was like in my blood. And you have to be interested in it. I like to build. I like to cut stuff, measure it, and like map out this crazy 3-dimensional puzzle, which is a festival, and like build it. And
it's a lot of skill sets.
It's so many skill sets.
It's so many skill sets. I mean, when you think about what you're doing, I mean, it's like it's all of this stuff now.
Absolutely.
And and then these days, if you have a small business or an operation like this, now you have to have like this. Now you have to be a marketer.
Yeah.
Now you have to like.
I've learned a lot about marketing and advertising.
Yeah.
I've learned that I'm doing 100 things at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found that out when I was this past winter when I was tallying up in all the fields I need to hire people to do the next Easy Fest and like getting the prices. And I looked at the long list of the, spreadsheet, the Excel sheet that I have with the people, the companies, the fencing, the insurance, security, stage management, this, lighting, like the whole thing. And I was like, I think I was doing like 85 jobs at once. I'm like, I just did all of this.
Yeah, you did all that stuff yourself.
And I'm like, now I just got to pay people to do each individual thing. They just do it at a really high level.
Yeah.
But they do each individual task.
Sure.
And I was like, just juggling it all. Obviously, I had some friends and stuff, but for the most part, I was just like, but I'm naturally curious. I was really interested. How do you do that? How do you make that? How do you?
Well, it's kind of like when I started doing the soccer games. It's like, when you figure that out, you're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Every single thing, you're like, all of these things, like, ball boys and uniforms for the ball boys and the soccer balls. Who's going to buy the soccer balls?
Yeah.
And
it goes down.
And how do you hire referees?
You have to reverse engineer everything.
Every single thing. Every single thing.
It's wild.
And you're just like, whoa. Who's going to sell the tickets? What do you mean who's going to sell the tickets? Well, how do Ticketmaster doesn't just sell your tickets, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, it's all of this stuff. And you're just like, wow, there is, like you said, an Excel sheet, lists and lists and lists of things that need to get done in order for this thing to happen. And especially when it's official.
Yeah.
Like,
when it's official, like that's what I was, communicating with the mayor and the police and like, this huge list at the old place. I was just winging it. And but it was a lot. I mean, I would spend the whole summer just working on it. I mean, I'd spend the whole year working on it, but I'd spend the whole summer like really working on it.
Yeah.
Like emailing all day, mapping out, planning out stuff, constantly on the internet, making sheets of like, okay, this tent will fit there if I cut it this way. And I'd customize the whole thing and buy all the metal and get, a metal grinder and have to build the tents to fit my yard specifically.
Yeah.
Otherwise, things just wouldn't look right. Yeah. So it was completely custom down to the cables buried in the grass. You know? But it was so much fun. It was the craziest thing ever. I'm excited for this documentary. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, how's that coming along?
It's going well. We worked on it all summer. Mm-hmm. And right now I'm working on the scores for it, doing the score, while the director is going through the interviews to have me not have my fingers on it. So it's kind of an objective perspective on the thing. I'm not like looking. I haven't seen any of the interviews. He did 40 interviews, 40 different people. So he's going through the interviews. I went through a lot of like the B-roll of stuff that I was in, like building the stages, setting up stuff, setting up the backdrops, the carpets, the cables, like doing all that, getting the wood, sending the emails. He lived with me for 6 weeks and filmed everything I did, like everything. Sun up to sundown, he filmed everything I did.
This was on the
This was 2022 last summer. He
during
lived
the last one.
in the cabin I built in the backyard behind the DZ. He lived in there, brought all his gear, and filmed everything I did the whole time.
Wow.
All of Charlie's T-shirt process. Like I would edit those T-shirt videos, like all the stuff that I was already aware of and I was in, and then I saw and experienced. I was able to go through and pretty much sift it down to where he's going to finally tune it and make it part of the narrative. But I got rid of all the fat on it.
Okay.
Shaky camera, dumb stuff that's like, this doesn't need to be in there. Then I passed it to him. He's going to fine tune it. But then all the interviews and like anything like that I know nothing about, he's the only one looking at it.
Okay.
So I kind of like helped liaison, did some of the heavy lifting for him. Then I'm more or less doing the, I don't know what you'd call it, like the
final edit,
the corporate side of it, trying to find funding, trying to get into theaters, like that side of it, using my connections to do that part. And then the score, getting some music in it, doing that type of stuff.
Gotcha.
While he's doing more like the final edit. Yeah.
Like music, are you music
doing
rights?
Music, I'm doing my own music, and then music I have from stuff I made already, and then music from a lot of the bands that I've played. So every band that's ever played, I have a high-end recording of it and video of it. So we're going to weave in and out the performances over 10 years of every band. We have high-quality footage of all.
Is that something where you're going to, are like music rights and things like that, or is that an issue, or is that something?
Well, technically not, because in every email I said I was going to do that, and I said if you respond to this to play that you agree that I get to do that, whether or not they read the fine print. I mean, that's for lawyers to figure out.
But you've already kind of covered yourself.
Without realizing it, I almost did it as a joke to motivate myself, but I've been doing it since day one without it realizing how big it was going to get.
Sure.
And I'm lucky I did that because I have been covering them. I just didn't realize. I was kind of just like doing it to be like, yeah, this is going to go towards the documentary. Yeah. In like 2013, I was saying that.
Oh, excellent.
I had no idea that I really was. I was just saying it because I was like, who knows? I'm getting all this footage. I might as well like say that, because if I don't do anything with it, it doesn't hurt anybody. If I do, I can go back in this backlog of a decade of emails and be like, yeah. Plus, it's like the situation of it and the vibe of it. It's like even if I didn't do that, I just don't see these bands. Like I don't see bands it's like a bunch of DIY bands playing in my backyard, and like they knew that they agreed to film. Like that's part of it too. And then also that sign, I don't know if you saw it walking down the stairs, this yellow sign saying like everything is filmed here, and we're gonna put it towards like the documentary. We're not responsible for like lost or stolen things. Like, so we put up signs, which is what you're supposed to do. And then I put in every email.
Okay.
And then everyone saw all the cameras on. They always agreed to it to come on. Like, it's always been an agreed upon thing.
Awesome.
Written and verbal. And because it's not that type of corporate thing where people love to be litigious and sue, it's not that world. The world you grew up in the 80s, that the graffiti hip hop world, like people don't sue in that world. Just like they don't in this world.
They're actually happy just to see.
Well, the thing it's all promoting that. This documentary is only good for the people. Like to sue over that would be ridiculous. It's like you realize you're just getting awesome promotion. Like this doesn't hurt you at all.
Have any of the bands that were that are involved in the festival gone on to do big things?
Yeah, this band right here, Beach Bunny, huge. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. They're younger, but they're huge. Yeah, legit huge. Like Bonnaroo, Coachella, Lollapalooza, Riot Fest.
Wow.
Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, they played them.
Wow.
They have like 8.7 million monthly plays every month on Spotify.
And they're local?
Local. Yeah, they used to play at the Ashbury and stuff.
No way.
Charlie's first show was his band Hype. Beach Bunny opened up for them.
No way. They opened? Really?
It was a solo thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They blew up. There's been a handful. Rap Boys is doing pretty well. But there's been a handful that are doing pretty well, especially from around the country. But I think by far the biggest that are probably doing very well and living off playing music is Beach Bunny.
Wow.
Huge in Chicago. They play anything in Chicago, it's sold out. They could probably sell at the Aragon Ballroom like, two nights in a row if they want. Oh yeah. It's great. It's crazy.
So they're from the area? They're from Southwest
they're from
side?
the area. I believe the person who's the lead singer and songwriter, Lily from Beach Bunny, I believe she's from the western suburbs.
Wow.
Or northwest suburbs.
Oh, cool.
Elmhurst or Schaumburg, and then started coming down to play shows, and she's played DZ Fest, There's been a handful that have done pretty well, or still are together and play, but they're really doing really well. And then this band Rap Boys that played a bunch of times is doing really well, and a couple other ones too.
Wow.
Yeah, but they're like living like a career off.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Oh, fantastic. Well, and just all the other musicians, right, that have come through there, and it's just
so many.
I mean, if you look at all those different posters, I mean, it's hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have played.
Yeah, just TZ Fest, not including those monthly shows we used to do. Did you ever go to one of those?
That's right. Yeah, I went to a bunch of them.
Those were, I did like 70 of those, and then the comedy shows. And then I did a couple fests.
I mean, it was a full on venue.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that basement was like, there was all sorts of crazy stuff going on there all the time. I mean, I just dropped by there on a Thursday. And it was like, what are you doing? A podcast down here? What are you doing down here?
A podcast, a session, an album, an EP, overdub for a commercial.
Yeah.
A show, a comedy show, a big show, a Halloween show, a winter fest. One of the winter fests I did in 2015, the posters on the stairs. I built a hallway. I took the doors off my garage and house, and I built a hallway out of wood while my parents were gone for like 2 nights. They were out for 2 nights. No. That was DZ Fest. All right. The first 3 DZ Fests I did while they lived there, but they didn't know, and they were like out of town.
No way. I didn't realize that your parents were just out of town.
Yeah, they're out of town. Wow. Where they live now, they were visiting, and I did it. They left Friday. I started building Friday, had the fest Saturday, took it down Sunday. They came home Monday. The grass is kind of dead. I'm like, it was a hot weekend.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was clever and smooth and good at what I did.
And your neighbors were cool. Yeah.
Neighbors are cool. They just thought it was normal. Like, I don't know. I just normalized it. Why it worked so well is, and this is, I'm a big nerd and a dweeb, and I just made sure I never drank or smoked or did anything.
Yeah.
And that's how I was able to do it, because when you have all your faculties in order,
you have to,
and you have a strong constitution.
Yeah.
Adults can see that. Even when you're 22 and you look like a rascal, adults are not stupid. They might not be on your same wavelength. They might not be in the art, but they know a person who has their head on their shoulders way better than other peers of your age. So my other peers didn't get it. They were partying, being idiotic. They weren't putting their money into this. And so I figured if like I was as mature as I could be about it and communicated and kept an eye on everything. After every DZ Fest, I sent friends out to clean up the whole neighborhood first, pick up all the garbage. I'm like, I don't care if it's ours or not. Just pick up every piece of garbage you see, because the next morning, no one's mad if the neighborhood's clean.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't from us, pick it up. Just pick up everything. So I'd send out a team to do that. I'd also send out teams to do the yards at night. It's like 1 a.m. with your flashlights. Just get everything, because the neighbors are sleeping right now. When they wake up and they see no garbage in their yards, none in the streets, that's so much more that they don't have to complain about.
Yeah, yeah.
Because then the next thing is like, well, it was loud. It's like, well, we'd end at 10. And that's like, luckily there's no sound ordinance in Hickory Hills. It's just like if someone complains, which I don't know if you knew that or not, but it's awesome. So there's no like legal time you have to be quiet.
Okay.
It's only if another tax-paying citizen complains.
And your neighbors were all on board.
And then they were all on board. They were there. So
they were selling stuff, right? They had the hot dogs. They were doing fundraisers.
They used it
and
as a
stuff,
fundraiser
right?
for their baseball teams for their kids.
Yeah.
And a funny loophole around it was the only people that would complain were the people not there, because they probably didn't really know about it. In the apartments behind the forest, there's an apartment complex behind the forest at the house. So they would call the police, but there's a funny loophole. That's Justice, and I'm in Hickory Hills. So they call the police, which wires them to Justice. Justice goes, what is it? And they go, yeah, it's loud over there on 85th Court. And like, well, that's Hickory Hills, so you have to call them. So they go, okay. So they call Hickory Hills, and Hickory Hills is like, well, you live in Justice, so that's Justice's problem. And they kind of just play this phone tag like game and mess with.
Yeah.
He would just give up. They'd be like, oh, whatever. And they would just give up. And a police officer told me that. He's like, yeah, we'd get complaints, but we just tell them, like, well, you live in Justice. Justice got to deal with it. Because when it's not like a non-confrontational, non-violent thing, it's just a noise complaint. They're like,
they don't care.
Yeah, they're just going to pass it back and forth. And the person just gives up, and that's it.
Wow.
I remember finding that out. It's just so many stories. I mean, I can talk for years about this.
I remember the cops were kind of on board. They were all cool because you guys weren't troublemakers.
The cops came in 2014 and stopped us at midnight. In 2016, they came 2 days, Wednesday, so 3 days early. The fest was Saturday. They came Wednesday, and they shut it down because the city, they had a new city attorney, not alderman, city inspector. A new city inspector got hired. The old one just like kind of turned a blind eye to it and just ignored it. I don't know why. Maybe they were towards retirement. They just didn't care anymore. But they got a new one who was inspecting a house and then saw my stages because I had them built already.
Yeah.
Went and told the police. The police came and stopped it. And I have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is huge. I have to set up everything those days for Saturday and Sunday. It's my first attempt at 2 days, 2 stages, 40 bands.
I believe I was at that one
in 2016.
Yeah.
And that was the first year I decided to double everything, and my friends were so mad at me. Like, dude, we just did 2 stages last year for the first time. Now you're gonna double the days and do 40 bands.
Yeah.
I mean, Pitchfork does 40 bands. Like, this is on a level that like big festivals do, and it's in my backyard. I'm 26, my 5th fest, and I said, yeah, we're gonna do. Like, we got to keep growing. It's on fire. Let's grow. And so they shut it down. I'm so upset. Tell my neighbor Dave, who was the one who would sell the hot dogs, and he's like, "Oh, we got to go to City Hall and like talk to them. I'll go with you." So we go down there with another neighbor. We go there. We're talking to them. The secretary was, for some reason, had this God complex, and she was being so mean to us. And she was just like, "You can't do your fest." I'm like, "Why?" And she just wouldn't. I'm like, first, I didn't say this, but like, she had no authority. She was just didn't want us to do it. And I was like, "Well, can we talk to someone who's like the mayor?" And she's like, "He's not here." I'm like, "Okay." The police captain. We have to go to the police department to do that. I was like, "Okay." So we go to the police department. He's out. He leaves at 4. It was like 5 o'clock. So he's gone. I'm like, crap. We're losing time on this because we can't do it. I'm not going to keep setting up. So I'm like, what do we do? And Dave's like, tomorrow morning he comes in at 8. We were told by that person there, like, he comes back at 8. So come back at 8 tomorrow. I was like, okay. So I went home. I had my friend come over who cuts my hair. I cut my hair because I looked like a hot mess. So I wanted to look sharp to present my case. So she cuts my hair. I go and buy the nicest clothes I can find. I completely transform my look because appearances are everything in this type of political situation. We pick up the next morning. My neighbor picks me up at 8. he saved the day because he was like a 50-year-old like taxman. He was like a man, like had kids and stuff, so like he could vouch for me. We go to the police department, and this is really funny because Charlie, the lieutenant who we talked with, Tim Stevens, he was really great. I walk in on his desk, and he has photos all over the internet from all DZ Fest. Just like the city lawyer captured everything we had available on the internet at the time, which wasn't much compared to now. But with a big photo blown up was Charlie stage diving,
crowd surfing,
like this, and he's like hitting my neck, and he just looked really dangerous. And he looks at me, he's like, "Who is Charlie Lunsford?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's my friend. He helps make the shirts." He's like, "See this crowd surfing stuff? You can't be doing that. That's how people get hurt. And unless you want your house insurance to like get sued, like this is stuff you can't be doing." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "All right, so no crowd surfing." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Proper egress for emergency vehicles." Like I was like, "We got that. We have a lot of space on the sides of the houses." He's like, "You can't charge at the door." I was like, "We don't. We literally just go donation only." So he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Can't serve alcohol." I was like, "We don't do that either. It's BYOB." He's like, "Okay, and you have to end by like 10. I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "There's no sound ordinance, but you have to do that." I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "I don't see you breaking any other laws." And I was like, "I thought I was." I was like, "Really?" I'm like thinking all these structures and things I'm building. And we looked up the code. The day before, also, I didn't mention that, I stayed up all night studying all the code and the numbers. Sure enough, I wasn't breaking any laws. In Hickory Hills, you can have a temporary structure at 4 feet tall, which is how tall my stages were, that doesn't break the earth and doesn't have permanent plumbing or conduit for like electricity, which we didn't have.
Wow.
So technically the stages were legal sanctioned structures, which makes no sense. And there's probably a little bit of gray area I was running into with the cables and stuff, but because they're extension cords, it's so hard to prove that it's extension cords. I could just rip them off the ground. Like it's not like I'm tapping into the actual circuit breaker with EMT pipe and stuff. It's not like that. Yeah. So it ended up being okay, and I had no issues that whole time and at all. And then by 2019, the police, or like 2018, the police would come at the end of the night and like help get everyone out and shine lights, not to like scare us, but to like help shine lights on the streets and get people out safely. And when we would move the porta potties from around the house from the volunteer tent, they would like shine a light and guide us across the yard from their car, and they're like, "All right, you're good," and they'd like guide us.
Really?
Yeah.
They were nice. I mean, I remember they were, they were
cool
towards the end.
And they would come and they'd be like, "Man, I wish I can come to this. This is so cool." But Lieutenant Tim Stevens always books us on or puts our shifts on this night, because they were younger guys. Yeah, they're like my age. They're like, "This is sick. I wish we can come to this." I was like, "Hey, not bad when the police are like wanting to go to your event. Yeah. Who's going to get you in trouble now? So I mean, there's more stories, but those were some of the bigger things. And I mean, by the last couple of years, it was like I felt like I was running the town. Like anywhere I went, everyone knew me. The bus drivers, the crosswalk people, the police, like everyone. Yeah, it was funny. I'd be going walks in the forest, and people would go on bikes like DZ, like people would yell it and stuff. It was really funny. Wow. And I was like, oh, I could just do this forever. But that's where I realized the switch went off. Like, oh, I can get too comfortable and stagnant here and just do it forever. It needs to grow beyond this. So I can do something more with it. Yeah, I mean, in order for it to grow, I think it gets stuck there. Yeah, you can only get so big, and that also not taken. It was a serious thing, but to the optics of the higher industry, not taken seriously. Because when I'd send out emails to get bigger acts, you say backyard, everyone instantly thinks very amateur. Yeah, and no matter how professional it was, it got really legit. Super high end, but people still think amateur. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and also the bigger the acts get, the more more expenses. That was a hard thing. It was hard to get the bigger bands financially. Yeah, and you were never going to be able to charge. No, so I mean, that's the thing. It's like you're stuck, and I realized you're stuck at a certain level. And I knew all those details when friends and family were like, "Why are you moving? Why would you do that?" I was like, "You guys understand? I want to keep this going. This is a crazy thing. I don't know anyone else who's ever done this. Like, I got to keep it going. And I can't do it if it's here. It's going to stop. It's going to fall very short." Yeah. It's too much work at some point to just do it for fun. Dangerous. No insurance, house insurance, the rain, oh my God. Yeah, you're lucky you got away with it. I lost a couple of years of my sanity, my life from there. Well, that's I guess that also comes with getting older. You understand the liability that goes along with something. When you're young, it's just It was exciting when I was young. I felt like I was gambling. Yeah. I was like, I could do this. Yeah. And then But the last one at 32, I was like,
Oh, man. You were just relieved that you got away with another one.
By the last one, like when the people left and we were sitting in the sound tent, like celebrating, I busted out this really nice bottle of scotch. I was like, I think I just started crying. I was like, I survived. Like, I did it.
Yeah.
Like, I somehow did it. Like, it's done. It's over with. We captured it. We got the doc footage ready to go. Like, holy cow.
Yeah.
No one got hurt. No one died. No one got arrested. No one sued. Like, we did it.
Yeah, we did it. I'm out.
I'm out.
I'm out.
I'm out.
Yeah. I'm out. I got away with it.
I got away with it.
That's
I'm
it.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really how
I know the
I'm
feeling.
sure you had a lot of those.
Yeah, at
feelings.
30. Yeah, that's kind of where I was when I was like,
2000, you're like, the 90s,
okay,
the 80s.
I'm like, man, I've gotten away. So far, so good. You know, I was like, oh, all right. I got to regroup.
There's something weird about that feeling when you're like,
Yeah, I know. Ooh.
a lot of close calls
Yeah,
the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know it. I mean, I think if you're smart, again,
Yeah.
if you have a little bit of self-awareness, you realize you're like, okay, all right. And it's like, okay, now, adjust. You have to adjust.
Yeah.
It's not that you're any, it's not that you're getting uptight. You're growing up a little bit, and you're understanding that things. I mean, you have to. If you're going to survive, you have to. And I think as you get older, you'll also realize you'll have friends who don't make those adjustments, and you're like, whoa.
Oh yeah.
It's like this is where I zagged, and that guy never zagged.
Yeah.
And some of them I still see them. And it's like I imagine. The way I look at it is like we were on a merry-go-round, and I go up to the fence, and I watch him go around every once in a while, like he's still on the merry-go-round. I'm like, oh my God.
And you're watching from like a nice cushy seat, like, oh boy.
You're like, oh boy, yeah. And I see him, and
I'm like, see that.
I'm like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, you're still on there, huh? You're like still going strong, and and you look like you never got off the merry-go-round, and it's like, it's like.
Yeah, you got to get off, and it's nothing bad. It didn't die.
No.
I was talking about it today with my students.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with the band yesterday out of town. I'm here with you. We're talking about
Yeah.
It's all over the place. It's manifest something. It has a different look to it.
Yeah.
It's grown and it's good.
Well, you're older too,
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
I can't
it
do
can't
that
be
stuff anymore.
can't be the same thing that it was in 2016.
No, and I don't want to have those house shows
Yeah.
anymore. I trashed my house.
Yeah.
So much chaos.
Yeah.
The drugs, the alcohol, the mischievous things. I mean, even when I think about like what people get in trouble with, and it's really unfortunate with like sexual assault and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad none of that stuff happened.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I kept a very keen eye on people, on men. I was always sober, on the creepers, on the dudes. If anyone was ever weird, we were on it. And I told my friends too, like, this is fun, right? Yeah. If you want to keep it going, we can't let any guys do anything weird. No vandalism, no sexual assaults, nothing. Like, when these events happen, this is like treat it like a job, and this is a career. Like, that's the only way to do it. And keep an eye on them and keep everyone safe, because a lot of DIY stuff that happens, the people who put it on get into the drugs and the weed and the alcohol and the ecstasy with their patrons, and then they make mistakes.
Yeah, then nobody's watching
no one's watching anything, and there's that power dynamic they get with women or men or whoever, and then it's very bad stuff happens. And I was like, that's always tempting, but I just stayed away from all of it.
It's part of having a good crew. It's like
good
friends.
crew. Stay away from it. Keep an eye on each other.
Important.
Everyone get each other's back.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the feeling of relief when you got to the end of the last
at the
one.
end, I was
you're
like,
just like, oh boy.
Yeah, that's how I feel now. I'm like, it's quiet. There's not concerts going on. There is not like 20 people staying the night. It's peaceful. Yeah. I mean, I miss some of the stuff, but I'm glad I was able to live it to the fullest.
Yeah,
like,
I think
the fullest.
I think when you go, exactly. That you lived it 100%.
Oh, so much.
And the other thing you realize is it's impossible to recapture that. You can't.
It was wild.
It's a time in your life. It's a period in your life, and I think part of it too is just that in your 20s, you're just so receptive to different things, and I mean, part of it is not having responsibility, the time of your life, I mean, stuff you're not even aware of.
Yeah.
And I think that, when you get older, you're just aware of things. So it's just impossible to have that good a time because you're not that careless or carefree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just something that doesn't happen when you're in your 30s, no matter how hard you try. Or, or as you get older, I see people that didn't do it when they were in their 20s who try to do it now, and it's just really bad.
Yeah.
It looks bad. It's clumsy. It's uncomfortable. And you're just like, there's a reason why you're supposed to do it in your 20s.
Yeah, get it out of your system. I tell everyone, your teens and 20s, get it out of your, especially teens like underage, like what you were saying.
Yeah.
Like that's when you like be really wild because you're not going to get in trouble.
Yeah, you're not going to.
15, be goofy.
I'm like, your parents can't even kick you out of the house.
Go cliff jumping, be wild.
Yeah,
you're not going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
You're 15.
Yeah, and you have time to fix all your mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the big thing too, is like when you're young, you got time to, you got time to make mistakes and you got time to correct for those mistakes. But as you get older, man, those making mistakes.
Oh, they carry so much more
weight. They carry a lot more weight. You can't like, waste time like
drinking.
That. Mm-hmm.
Like I love me a good drink, but drinking at 20 or 19 or 21 versus, your age, even now, and you're what, 17 years older than me, 18 years older than me. It's like, I'm just, you can't recover. You can't think the same way.
You can't lose that next day.
No, you realize like tomorrow is really important to me.
Yeah.
I cannot get drunk tonight.
Yeah.
Or maybe if I do drink, it'll be like one drink because I need tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're that age, it's just like, you could do whatever.
Yeah.
You don't care.
Yeah.
The next day, it's like, it's whatever. I'll wake up at noon. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's like, no, I want to wake up at 7 tomorrow. I know it's Saturday, but I like getting up at 7.
Mm-hmm. I got stuff to do.
I got stuff to do. Things matter. I got
yeah.
things to do. I got errands. I got a kid. I got a niece to watch. Like whatever it is,
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny.
There's different things that are important to you at that point. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Do you have anything? Guess how long we've been talking for?
I don't know. Really, that long
3
already?
hours.
Wow. This is a long podcast.
Yeah. I think we're almost at 3. I think we're like 8 minutes short.
Oh boy. You want to go for you want to go for the full 3 or you're
sure.
wrap this
8
up?
minutes.
Yeah, well, 8 minutes.
Well, while we're here, plug your shop and stuff so where people can find it if they want to go check it out.
Yeah, that's right. So I have
it.
a bicycle shop. It's Bici Bicycle Shop in Willow Springs, Illinois, at the corner of Willow Springs Road and Archer Avenue.
Where'd that name come from?
It's short for Tu Bicicleta.
Oh.
Tu Bici. So, but it's the number 2 BICI, so 2 BC. So, like when I was opening the shop, I was trying to figure out, I wanted to call it Tu Bicicleta, but I thought that, I'm like, if I spell it in Spanish, people aren't going to get it. It was the southwest suburbs.
They're definitely not going to get it out there.
Yeah, it was a little bit too,
Springs.
but I'm like, so how do I get them to say it? I'm like, how about 2? Because 2 and BC, maybe they'll get BC. And, when I first opened, it was just getting massacred. It was just like 2 Bici, 2 Beachy, just all sorts of stuff, And there were a lot of people giving me heat about the name of the shop, and I'm like, hey, look, man, Google is the biggest company in the world, and who knew what Google was? So
yeah,
I'll figure it out, and it's worked out. It's fine. People have gotten it in 2 BC.
It's been 13 years.
Yeah, 13 now.
Wow.
Yeah, 13 going to 14 next year or so.
Wow.
Yeah, I just show up every day. I used to imagine myself just every day I was like driving a brick and just putting a brick in place. Like every day I go to work, that's like mentally I would think, and then there were other times that I think every day I was like, all right, there's $100 bill taped to the wall. I just got to go there and grab my $100 bill, but I got to drive there every day and grab it. So just mental games that you'd play with yourself to show up every day and do what you got to do.
It's amazing though. I mean, you've had a wild life, and we only got the tip of it. Just what you told me you did, and all the things you did, and where you've been, and who you've met, and
I guess it has been. I mean, it's been fun, man.
Sounds fun.
I got I've always done whatever I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. I
relate.
I've always done whatever.
Do you know any other way?
I don't.
Right? When people don't do that, it confuses me. I'm like, but what are you doing?
What are you doing?
When they're like worried about other people's thaughts of them, it's like you realize it's their thoughts, not yours. So why are you letting that impede on your path? Don't.
Yeah.
Respect people and be nice, but literally do you.
Yeah, I've always just done whatever I want. And it hasn't always made people around me happy. For
was
sure.
it hard to with relationships? Because it has been for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly at the beginning, and then I've gotten a little bit, I've become more tactful about it, and my wife and I have been together for 23 years, 24 years since 2000. Since 2000, yeah, 1999, yeah.
Okay.
And so yeah, I mean, we've grown together, and she's cool, to put up with me. She's going to be pretty cool.
I don't know if I've met her.
I think you have, because she was at DZ, but she's been there.
Those are blurry.
Yeah, she's been there. You have a lot going on when you're there. I know how when, on event days there's just too much stuff.
Yeah,
going
you
on.
Remember when on your event?
Oh
days,
no, I know.
You might have met 700 people.
You shake a lot of
hands.
hands.
Like, I don't know. Who
I have no
met.
idea, man. I got stuff to do. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
I got zip ties to go and find. But yeah, I think it's. I encourage young people to do. Like, go out and do stuff, man. Just do it. Don't think about it too much, and don't be afraid. I see a lot of kids more afraid than ever, man.
Afraid.
They're like afraid. I'm like, what are you afraid of?
They're afraid of being afraid. They're afraid of afraid. I'm like, what you got? There's too many.
Just do it, man. Just go and do it.
I have I have so many students like that. They're like, how do I do this? I want to do that. I'm like, just go do it. And they're like, but where? I'm like, first of all, you have a tool that me and my predecessors didn't have. It's called a smartphone. You could just look this up.
You have every answer.
You just Google it.
You could,
and you're still asking me, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's like, how do I build a studio? It's like, look it up.
Look it up. There's
look
YouTube. There's a YouTube video that
look at what studios look like. How could you mimic that on a cheap budget? And I give them advice. Do what I did. I'm like, I went out on garbage night every Wednesday and would pick out foams from couches and cut them out and carpets. And they're like, really? I was like, yeah, but when do you do it? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, the winter, because of bed bugs and ticks and lice. You don't do it in the summer. You don't want to bring that stuff into your house. You do it in the winter. Wow. It's not surviving. Can't survive. Yeah, you craft it. Get the foam. Yeah. You go to couches over winter when it's cold out. They all have this foam. It's the same foam you have in high-end stuff. It's nasty looking, but you can cover it up with sheets and stuff and shove it in your ceiling like I did and cover it with carpet. And it's free, and it takes some time and intuition of like what to do, and yeah, that's it. And they're like, "Oh," I was like, "I mean, what else can you? I don't know. No one told me. You just figure it out." And they're like, "Well, I want to do a show." It's like, "Well, do you know any bands?" No. It's like, how do you find bands? It's like, dude, go on Instagram. You'll find bands forever. Just like go on Instagram, go on Google, and type in what city you're in. If you're in Cincinnati. Big indie bands in Cincinnati right now, and you'll get lists because local newspapers make them. It's that simple. They're like, oh, I'm like, how do you not think about this?
Well, I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier and how some people can do it and some people can't.
Yep.
It's just some people have natural curiosity, right? I mean, if you don't have if you're not curious about things, you're not gonna be able to do this.
Yeah.
Because you have to have some. If you're having to tell people how to do it, then it's like. That's already kind of the bad,
Yep. I know. I never remember asking one person how to do it ever.
No, you just started doing it, right? You just started doing it. I
was like, okay, and then I messed up all the time.
Yeah.
Failure is just growth. It's growth that stings a little bit, but it actually feels good because you're like, okay, never do that again.
Yeah.
Bad idea, good idea. Like you just learn. You learn.
It's part of the process. You have to fail. Yeah.
You can't even look at it as failure. It's more like.
It's a learning opportunity.
It's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Obstacles are opportunities.
It's very stoic of you.
What?
It's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
That it's you. I mean, that really is. It's
absolutely.
What that's what it is. Some people will get knocked down by that failure, and then other people, you got to turn it around and be like, okay, I'm not doing that again. I learned my lesson there. I'm not gonna repeat that. What I learned from this. What do I learn from this situation, because, if you're going to continue, then, you can't get beat down by it.
No.
And plenty of people are, so.
Most are. I wish they weren't. I'm trying to be more positive. It sounds negative. It's like, no, I'm like encouraging people. Go out there and try something, do something new, follow a passion in something simple. Could be art, a band, a podcast, exercise, biking, anything. Just try it.
Yeah,
keep doing it.
That's how I've been able to keep young people at the store. Like employees, is that bike shops don't pay very well, so you're there basically because it's fun, and try to keep it fun for them. I get a lot of young people working at the shop, teenagers and maybe kids in their early 20s. And, I find that money's not the motivation for them because they can make $20 an hour working at Aldi these days, but if they're learning something and they're, deriving something from being there, from their time there, they're more apt to stay. And they're excited. They're actually excited about coming to work because they learned something else. And so trying to get them to be self-confident, and like learning those kind of skills that you need to survive in life as opposed to just a paycheck. It's just in the bike shop I found always, for me anyway, it gave me that opportunity, to talk to a lot of people. You got strangers coming in every day, you're selling, then learn how to sell. The bicycle, in bike shops, you meet people from every every walk of life.
Absolutely.
You really well off doctors and lawyers and these famous people I was talking about.
Yeah.
But homeless people as well. So like you get to talk to everybody and you get to learn how to
two guys from
people.
Japan kicking a soccer ball across
that
the country.
lived in your backyard. How about those guys? I mean, yeah. See,
that's
how
when that happened. That's how I knew you and I were on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
I was like, when you passed them on to me.
Yeah.
You knew I would have the answer to gave them a place to stay. Then they went to Colombia and then they came back and stayed with me longer. I showed them their first American beer and their first hamburger.
Yeah.
They loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's fun. Like, who else goes, I'll let these two random men from Japan kicking a soccer ball across the country, sponsored by Adidas or something, just stay at your house and they don't speak any English.
And I knew the guys, I know just a place where they could stay.
And I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
And my friends were like, what? I was like, what are they going to do? What? Who cares?
Two wacky Japanese guys kicking a soccer ball across the country.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I loved those wild experiences, just random people just staying the night and staying up all night talking. I've been doing podcasts forever because I just now have mics in front of me. But I've been staying up late talking for hours with people I've never met or don't know well.
Yeah.
I've been doing it since 2012 when I started my first podcast, and I still do it, 11 years later, and it's like I've learned so much from people.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You build a little personal connection, you learn things, and you also realize that you're not alone in the world, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, there are actually a lot of people, like you said, on the same wavelength, and the interesting thing is when you meet those older people, older than me, that are like, oh wow, you're one of mine. You're the older version of me. I have a handful of those guys in my life too. So even above me, there are those people that are. You're just like, whoa, man, you did what? It's like really, really interesting. And I've been really fortunate to work with like mentors and people that I've looked up to, and get to meet them and work with them. And we haven't scratched the surface about some of the stuff that I've done, but
we'll have to have another one.
Yeah, man, anytime, man.
We'll have to do one.
I like talking to you, man.
Like earlier, we'll start at like 6, so we can go like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, no, there you go. This is enough. People are gonna get tired of me. So
I can't wait to do it again. And thank you for coming and doing this. This was really fun. I've always enjoyed you and seen you from afar and respected that you did your own thing and started your own business and you do what you love.
Yeah.
And I didn't know all these other stuff about you, but I'm glad I learned.
I've always admired, what you were doing over there, and like just wrangling that crew. And, I knew Charlie really well who worked with you. He worked for me at the shop. And so, I've always been kind of aware of what you were doing over there. I always promoted the DZ. And
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had more time to have dedicated to that too, just because, but everybody's got their thing going on.
Yeah, you got your life. And I mean, the fact that you thought about it and you have the post and you came by here. Yeah,
I still got that there. Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Especially a lot of people who were not in our age group or scene, they might have been like, I don't know, I'm a little too, and the fact that you like would still participate and appreciate it. I mean, it
was fun. I was always proud of you guys,
Thank you.
just doing stuff, it was like, had that Little Rascals,
Yeah.
kind of feel to it. It's like putting
Absolutely.
on shows, and I mean, as a show that I watched when I was a little kid too.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, you can do that. Let's just do it. Let's do a show.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Awesome.
man.
All right, Joe.
Cool.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for
Anytime,
listening,
man.
everybody.
Yeah. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
All right.
Ciao.